like is it? Do I mean Max Branning from EastEnders or something?
Who? EastEnders? Who watches that now?
So I don't watch
Right.
it, but again, there are some serious similarities there. Just bald and ginger, basically.
Max
I've just done that.
Bowden.
There's one photograph of him with a beard, and I see it there, but it seems most of them he doesn't have a beard. So,
Yeah.
Oh, Max Branning.
I can.
I can see a bit like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought when you said EastEnders, I thought you were going to say what? Phil Mitchell? One of the Mitchells? That's the only people I know from that program. And
That is
Yeah,
quite a while ago
been told to
now.
look like
that's my knowledge.
Been told to look like Ross Kemp. Definitely got the physique. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's lockdown
Being
season,
brave,
so.
I ran away again. Here's me running away from more things.
I used to love that show.
What, the Ross Kemp thing?
Kemp on Gangs. It was
Yeah.
so good.
Oh, it was in that what's it called? Like SWAT. Was it called SWAT? I think it was. It's like a TV show. It's really good.
Yeah, there was another one where he went to like I think Afghanistan, and to be fair, I was like, that is fucking ballsy.
Yeah,
that is
jeez.
like that was like in 2000, and the internet is telling me 2007. So like
Ooh.
pretty
I wouldn't do
to
that.
the war. Like yeah, I would not do that.
Sod that for a
Yeah.
laugh. Sod that for a laugh. Oh, that's why I always give like Prince Harry credits. I like it, to be honest, I like him more and more, despite not being a royalist or anything. I thought you didn't have to go over to Afghanistan, and it's like but they made him really really safe. It's like but once you're there, how safe are you?
Only so
You are. Yeah, your chances of death have probably like already gone through the roof, like regardless of whether you're a civilian or whether you've got the world's best protection. Because if they want to launch a missile at you, it doesn't matter how many Royal Guard you got round you, you're still likely to cop it. So
just flying there, like flying over that airspace, your like chances of dying are already like
Yeah.
Pretty high. Yeah, you're already fair play to him and fair play to Meghan Markle for just basically taking everybody to task. Really, I found I got pissed off this morning on my way to work because it was It was LBC, and it was something that clearly she knows a lot about. I actually can't. I wish I could remember what it was because she was really insightfully and intelligently articulating a point. And the presenter, who basically I think canvasses just basically for early rising gammons, just went, "No, what's she going to talk to us about next? About nuclear physics?" It's like, no, she's going to talk about the thing that she knows about. So why shouldn't she talk about it?
Yeah.
Cool.
I do think it's weird though how everyone's like Harry's gone quite like, as much as I don't like the word, like going fairly woke, but I do think it's weird everyone's just forgotten the like the absolute string of racial slurs that he used when he was actually in like the Air Force out in Afghanistan.
Oh,
Do you remember that
definitely. It's a
stuff that
bit
was on,
more of an
like, video?
acceptable, well, not an acceptable time, but it was more of a.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah,
a lot of people have. It doesn't seem to get like brought up that much, but it was pretty bad. Bad enough that I'm definitely not going to repeat it right now.
Did you see that video of him basically? I can't remember if I can see if I can find it, but he was saying how the things that he knows about the inner workings of the monarchy and stuff like that are a bit. Well, he basically stopped himself from saying stuff to this reporter.
But as in, like, there's things that are quite unpleasant that he knows and would rather not say. What do you think? I mean, do you think that's just because he's just trying to be as polite as possible, not upset the apple cart, or he feels he could be?
Well,
could be in danger.
From here we go. I don't want a repeat of the past. So I'm guessing he's referring to his mother there. Where it's someone else outside of the family.
There's another documentary coming out. I think I can't remember when it was, but it was in the ad break for The Simpsons, and it's on Channel 4, and it's about Diana again. And this is what I don't. It's almost like. What I find interesting is that the media sort of lives in this thing where they can be simultaneously away. What possibly prompted this person to run away from interviews and to run away from us screaming her name whilst putting cameras in her face? And it's like, why won't her son's other half let us do the same thing? And why does she kick back every time we do it? It's like, because you make her life a misery and you hold like Kate Middleton to a different standard that you do this person who just happens to not be royal and a little bit black. Like, so that's just like, let's not beat around the fucking bush here. It's like, oh, like, honestly, if I could count, like, all of my older relatives have got like the Harry and Meghan divorce clock. Like, if they could buy it in the back of the Daily Mail, and I think probably the Daily Mail will end up selling it.
Yeah, that sounds like something they'd do. You
listen, mark my words. 2 years from now, be divorced. Mark my words. Like, I actually probably guarantee they'll probably end up living like quite a long life together. And if not, they'll probably just stick together if it means it pisses off tabloids. Like, it's like, if this means that more like right-wing, upper-class, middle Englanders get pissed off we're still together, then let's stick together and let's just make it work. The fact
I'm not like a monarchist by like any stretch at all. In fact, I'm a pretty staunch Republican. But like, I do think it's interesting how like watching the trajectory of what's happening. Like, if this is the path that like Harry and Meghan have chosen, then like that's interesting in itself. But are we just going to see this from generation to generation now? Like, it will become more diluted, more people who decide they don't really want anything to do with it. And I thought it was interesting, like, for example, that Harry and Meghan decided, they weren't going to use any royal finances anymore for any of their other stuff. It's like, at least they've literally put their money.
Which everyone likes to ignore and pretend isn't the fact. Like, they want to make them out to be, ungrateful, scrounging bastards, which they're not. Like, it is weird how I have to. It's almost like every meeting with anybody who's an uncle or an aunt or whatever in my trajectory or that ilk. I literally have to tell them, like, you do know they're not taking any more money, right? Like, oh yes, they are. So it was like, no, they're not. They're actually not. Like, oh well, they'll probably ask for more money. I think there's a thing like I don't know whether it's you get to a certain age you just need a hate figure, and Meghan Markle in her own provides.
Some people just go looking for it, though, don't they?
Whatever.
Like.
Yeah, of course they're trying to find something to get wrong with her. So she's. She's like Schrodinger's wrong person. So she can, if she, joins the royal family and enjoys the spoils of it, she's like just being a leech. And then if she goes off and does her own thing, earns her own money by doing, voiceover work for Disney, and Disney are willing to pay her a large amount of money to do it, which is fine. That's earning a living, whatever. If he decides to earn a living, he's gone through Goldman Sachs, which I think is a really fucking massive misstep. If you want to be like, I'm really woke. Jesus. I'm just deliberately not going to be financially woke as to be like align myself.
I don't want to fuck myself over, basically.
Evil bank in the world, like.
The fucking criminally complicit bank, pretty much solely responsible for the 2008 financial crash, which fucked over everything, and he's gone with them. It's like, could you not have just found like a non-profit or Oxfam or whatever, stuff
you should have brought your PR spokesman from the royal family over with you, mate.
Should have brought we're gonna need to. Who are we gonna get to defend him? Like, let's get Prince Andrew's PR guy. He's just a whiz. He'll sort this out. Nobody will have
he's not dead.
Sweat, pun intended.
Yeah, let's have an interview where we just crank up the heating really high and just show how little you sweat. One of the best statuses that I saw in that heat wave during the early August of this year, which was like, it's nights like this that I envy Prince Andrew lying in bed dry as a bone.
No, that went really quiet.
I think
I haven't heard anything about that in ages. It's just one of those things that was like huge news at the time, and then I think for a while the US said they would question Prince Andrew, and he was just like, nope.
Griswold
There wasn't much else.
What's her name? Griswold.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
That's Ghislaine Maxwell. That's the one. Yeah. She obviously
she's got an
was
in
found.
You don't pronounce. So.
Yeah, she was obviously.
Yeah, nothing much. I haven't heard much. Well, because coronavirus is taking over everything. So that was what I remember the work I was doing. So if I was at the electrical firm, so that would have been like round about the same time as the whole Iran thing. So I think we thought the story of 2020 would be like, oh, are we going to be at war with Iran? And then at that same time, the Prince Andrew thing came out.
Soleimani, is it?
Yeah, and then coronavirus came out. So I think that was February. I have a feeling it was January, February time.
It was
before coronavirus was a thing.
Simon, can you turn your mic up a little?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, is it not too?
Why can't we can't see you on the main feed. We can't see you on the Discord feed. I don't know whether that's your personal choice not to be seen.
No, because I have to use that feed for the stream, and I'm using your two feeds that you're projecting for the stream as well.
Right,
so
okay.
If you put up my stream,
If
you'll
I
be able to
move
see
over
me,
to-
but it'll be a bit delayed. I
I'll
think.
tell you what I'll do is I'll double you up on Twitch.
Yeah,
so
yeah. If
then I can
on
see your-
Discord, if you go to Discord, you right click on my picture, and you can slide the bar right up of my volume. So hopefully
okay.
that'll
Right
that'll
click.
better.
Oh, there you go. Right, you're at max at this end.
Oh, good.
Joe, you're at max.
don't
Is
know
Dougal
how
joining
to-
us?
No, he's working. He's gonna have to be doing either Monday or Tuesday, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to the two
this week
nights that I
gonna
never
be
get to
like
do.
The shorter one.
The shorter one, yeah, it's probably gonna be about an hour or so.
Cool.
Yeah, just like a little catch up, so you can get some more people in that can't do the weekends and whatnot. So, cool. Yeah. Okay. So,
Play.
things to talk about this week. So we've got the whole no deal that Boris looks like he's pushing.
Which I didn't surprise me.
Yeah,
Not
I've
surprise me
seen.
in the slightest.
Well, no one really thought that it would be oven ready, especially when he's breaking international.
In a very specific way, he's breaking international law.
Oh yeah, obviously
Come-
that.
be fair- be fair
Okay, I'll
to
be
the man.
fair.
Be fair to
It's
the man.
fine.
Yeah, be fair to the man. He's
Specific
breaking it in
rule
a
breaker.
very specific way. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So
Oh god.
yeah, what do people think
What I
about
have
this?
noticed
This is a
is-
long time
well,
coming, I think, wasn't
I
it?
tell you what I've noticed is that people who were yelling that it was the best thing since sliced bread on my Facebook feed have gone very, very quiet. And the only thing you're
Yeah.
hearing is stuff from the people like me, who literally the level of "I fucking told you so" is through the roof. And I think to be honest, possibly there might be just a case of, for many people, like, so they might be thinking, so on top of this, everything's going to be more expensive if we can get it at all.
Yeah.
We suddenly lose the ability to trade and sell. We've got far more paperwork. There's not one single upside to this apart from a feeling of nationality, fly fraggy type thing. Like, I literally, like, all the people who are making like long-winded financial kind of, what I call, there's like,
There will be trade,
there's
but
the
it just
Sun. Yeah, well,
Yeah, it
I
won't
say
be-
there's two kinds of Brexiteers. Like, there's the Sun. There's kind of like the Sun and Daily Express Brexiteer, where it's all based around just immigrants, get them out, yell about something about sovereignty, get over it. And then there's like a Telegraph kind of online pseudo-intellectual Brexiteer that goes, well, actually, you find that actually we can enjoy a far greater level of freedom. Like the Jacob Rees-Mogg kind of Brexiteer, which is sort of
Oh,
different. But
did you
both of them have gone.
the Reese More? Oh, was it the Morecast? That's it. We had one of our.
I never listened. I didn't want to fucking disappoint myself. So.
I think it's like 10 minutes in, and you already fucking lied and misunderstood a whole like main point of his own argument. It's just it's pretty terrible.
He did, because he's not got anyone telling him otherwise. He's not like, that's
Yeah.
why I would really like to see him and Keir Starmer go against each other. I'd be quite interested in seeing that. Like, I just, like to actually see the two of them go at loggerheads. Because Keir Starmer, like, for all the screams of centrist and whatever, but he is like a proper lawyer. He is
well, he's
actually like,
for
he's a
terrorists
QC and he's a knight, so.
Called?
Yeah, I think Keir Starmer definitely, I think, comes across as like a professional politician. He's like, this is what I think is interesting about Labour. I'll get back onto like Brexit in a minute, but Labour now, I feel like, I think I said it the last time I was on, I feel like Labour now has a level of like professionalism almost within the front bench that you haven't seen in a while.
It doesn't seem to be that much
the
passion.
Corbyn
though.
front bench was like, I don't think it was all terrible, but I feel like there was some serious like talent lacking there. Whereas now I think you're seeing some really, really good like front bench performances from Labour again, which I think is really interesting. With Brexit though, like, it didn't surprise me that this came out today, but I still don't think it like matters, because we've been here before, like, so many times. This is not the first time when a UK Prime Minister, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, whoever it is, has basically come to the point where they go, you know what, we're probably not going to get a deal, and then kind of 2 weeks later they're going, oh, we've almost got a deal, and it goes through Parliament or whatever. Like, this has happened before. I still think what's happening here is that Boris Johnson it's brinkmanship, basically. He's trying to bring it as close to the point as possible where it looks like we might not get a deal, and hoping that the EU will panic, and the EU probably has some reason.
They're not going to.
I actually disagree. I think with COVID, everyone's a bit more desperate. I think Boris Johnson isn't showing it, but I would be really surprised if Boris Johnson would be happy to have the economic devastation of COVID coupled up with whatever kind of devastation there would be as a result of falling out of the EU without a trade deal. I think Boris Johnson really does want a deal. I just think he's going about it in a risky kind of, I don't know, Kennedy Cuban Missile Crisis sort of way. And I think him putting out a statement today is basically him going, we're prepared to walk away, and hoping that elicits some sort of response from the European Union. Whether it will or not, I don't know.
So you think it's a bluff? So you think he's trying to call a bluff?
Well,
if he makes a big song and dance about it, then if it's one of those things where it gets kind of the gander of the EU and go, right, well, we're in so much uncertainty across the whole world because of coronavirus, do we really want to go on? You know, is it what you're saying is you reckon that in his mind, they'll sort of like the powers that be within the EU will go, well, let's throw in the towel in terms of like trying to get everything our way and give them something, because giving them nothing's at a time like this. I mean, they would find, the thing is, if they gave us everything and it still went fucking tits up and it was a disaster, and 6 months into 2021, everybody's poorer, there's a mass unemployment, everybody's food is fucking poisonous, and yet we were given everything and we turned it down, the papers would still find a way to make it the EU's fault. No matter, you know, there would be no way of convincing the average person in the street that this is actually like, this was never going to be good.
I feel like he's got a plan, but it's just going to be, you know, one that he kind of just plays out with this, because he's already said, you know, previously, no deal is what he wanted. You know, trades with America have always been on the table. You know, I don't think Boris Johnson's the only one making these decisions. You know, obviously you've got other advisors and other people that influence him in all different areas, not only in financially. So, you know, hopefully his plan isn't what everyone on the seemingly centre/left side, you know, is kind of worried about, which is, you know, the NHS is up for sale, which obviously it is already been siphoned off and, you know, privatised, and so, you know, it's.
I don't think that's so. I don't think Boris Johnson's plan, whether it will happen or not, is another matter. But I don't think his plan is to crash out the European Union without a trade deal. I think ultimately, like, what Boris Johnson has been fairly clear about, and he has been fairly clear about this, is they want a Canada-style free trade deal. When he came in, he always said, we don't want a Norway, we don't want to be that closely tied to the European Union. We want more like, we will accept the minimum amount of regulations so that we can trade with you. And it seems clear to me that they're getting stuck on, you know, fishing quotas, which seems pretty unimportant in the grand scheme of things, but yet they are stuck talking about fishing quotas.
I think that's an appeasement thing. I think that's an appeasement to the people. If you know, the one of the biggest things that I heard in terms of like a protest was always about the fishing, always about something in, you know, which
the packaging, the ice bag, wasn't it, with the fish from the Isle of Man and all that kind of stuff.
And that
wasn't even true.
Also about how, you know, they collect, exactly. But it was also about like how they collect things. Like, so do you realise like you're trying to simplify something that takes place in international waters? Let's just be honest. This is the thing. It's in international waters. You're like, how do you draw a line in fucking water? You know, and just be like, everything on this side is all glorious British and everything on that side is horrific EU. It's like, well, at some point there's going to be boats will go into, you know, like fishing vessels will go into other areas, and that's unavoidable. You can't, because it's like, you know, navigating on a piece of sea and going, am I exactly over the line or whatever? It's nigh and impossible. So how
fishing thing's weird though, because I think there were some genuine grievances by fishermen. I mean, remember that like fishing accounts are, I think, 1% of, it's either 1% of the economy or 1% of employment. I can't remember which. But like there was
I'll look that up.
Like the European Union, like there are like fishing quotas, right? So if you catch over your allotted amount of fish for the day, you have to throw literally dead fish back into the sea. Like that. I mean, that in itself is pretty crazy.
That's stupid. Yeah,
there's
that is pretty
there are
stupid.
some
That
weird
is
things around
arbitrary.
fishing and some probably genuine
I've got the figures here if you'd like to hear them. About
yeah, go for it. Cool.
So it says, so this is literally the first result, and this is DW. This is UK. I think this is from a business. Is this Business Insider? I can't tell. DW. So the UK. The summarized thing is the UK's fishing and fish processing industries employ 24,000 people in all, contribute 1.4 billion pounds to the UK economy. That is just under 13% of GDP, and it employs less than 0.1% of the UK's 33 million strong workforce.
You think that's 13% of GDP?
That's quite high, isn't it? That's
no. 1 point.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, just bear with me a second because this might go everywhere because the rest of them have. So
that's cool.
Oh no,
I'm getting a drink as well.
Oh, is that a Dead Pony Club?
Mm-hmm.
What a choice!
But the woman in the thing dropped it briefly, and I think that like because all of the ones I've had so far have just like sparked up. Like I did the second one over the sink just to be careful, but like I can't obviously run all the way down to the sink. Yeah, I just thought I won't go full punk IPA tonight. I want to be semi-comatose by the end. If I was to I'll go Dead Pony Club and have a full 0.10% off the alcohol level. But yeah, no. So that amount, that contribution to GDP is 0.12% ish.
It's minuscule. I think fishing became a bit of a symbol for some Brexiteers. I think and to be fair, you can't ignore that there are 24,000 people who think their standard of life could be better off. Like it's still an amount of people that matter. I guess like fishing became.
I wouldn't dismiss them. I wouldn't dismiss it.
And stuff like that, and that's probably why it's got a certain power. But like going back to my original point, the reason why I also think this is a bluff is that like the EU's negotiators are still coming over to I assume London like next week or the week after. If Boris Johnson was
2 weeks, haven't they?
We are not going to have a deal, then they wouldn't be coming over. They even said in the news today, like, no, we still got scheduled meetings next week. Like we are still going to be talking about this. So I think it's a bluff. Whether it will pay off, I don't know. And what I'd be interested to see is if it doesn't pay off, does Boris sort of come crawling back, or does he actually go, right, we're done, like this we will not be getting a free trade agreement, we'll just leave it. It'd be interesting to see if he follows through on it.
What do you think he'll do?
Change his mind again and pretend that he never had that idea in the first place?
I think there'll be some sort of. I think both sides will give something. I don't know on what. Like there are lots of things that they have clearly done agreements on already that they seem content about. Whether it's
got signed, didn't it?
Last 2 or 3 things, I think both sides will probably end up giving something. I still would be fairly optimistic that we will come out of this with a free trade deal, which will still be, I think, a bit damaging in the short term. But I guess I voted for Brexit, and I always thought this could be a short term hit for something that could potentially be better in the long term. I think especially when the vote was happening, you looked at unemployment figures across especially the Mediterranean, Greece, Italy.
Greece.
The future for Europe at the time, and to be fair, now doesn't look particularly rosy. So I guess I argued then, and I would probably still argue now, maybe a little bit less passionately, that you could still prosper outside, but it might take a few years to get to the point where you've done more deals like the one we've just done with Japan, and you've got kind of that free trade flowing. But it was always going to be a short-term hit. I think it's doable if that short-term economic hit is, -1, -2% of GDP for a couple of years. But if we're looking at what we're on now, like -14% GDP, Corona, exactly. With a few extra added on.
I just also add that I think this was 2 years ago. I've got 2 points to make because being in the entertainment industry, we were talking about the contribution of, what contributes this to economy and yada, yada, yada. So I'm just going to make that point really quickly. So the UK's creative industry, so that's probably theatre, TV, radio, film, live music, stand-up, all that lot. contributes about 13 million to the UK economy every hour. New government figures showed in 2018 alone, creative industries contributed nearly 112 billion to the UK. That's about 110 times what fishing does in 1 year.
Creative is a funny word though. Like I would love
very catch-all.
Very catch-all, because that could be anything from like what I work in marketing, and some people would consider that a creative sector to be in. I wouldn't. I would almost say it's more. It's like not a million miles off sales almost sometimes, and then it's got a bit of data.
Yeah, but you got parts of like advertisement and other design that goes into it as
exactly.
well. So, yeah,
and you can easily be a marketer who actually does your own photoshopping and InDesign. I'm shit at that stuff, but like. Yeah, so I find the term creative because it can catch so many things. I mean, like if you were to use the term creative there, I think you'd get people thinking that is just like gigs, music, film, whatever it is, and entertainment. But I wonder if creative there they're using that pretty loosely. Not that it matters for this discussion, but I guess you get the point.
The second point I wanted to make was that they said that the hit to I'm pulling these figures from something I remembered, and I could be completely wrong. So if anyone's happy to, if anyone's got a third window they can bring up to check them. But the approximate hit to British GDP as a result of the 2008 financial crash was about 5. It was like a 4.5. I think it was 3.5 to 4.5%, and they reckon that any Brexit whatsoever would be 9 pushing 10. And it was not good for us, not good for many people that I know. 2008, 2009. I remember my old man was looking for like another job late 2009. He didn't end up having to get one, but it was really looking dicey.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had to re-interview for the job that he already had to keep it. And
a lot of people, I heard a lot of people had to do that. Like they had to re-screen people to go, is it really worth having these people in? And my dad's self-employed, but he just watched all the big stuff go. I mean, it's it's quite good. The mortgage was paid off 2 years prior, so I mean, in terms of worries, that was very much not there. But
well, it looks like from Parliament
quite hard.
It looks like from Parliament.uk, GDP fell by 2.6% in a single quarter. Not sure.
Was that 2000 and?
I can actually show 2008. Yeah, financial crash. Yeah. That's just in one quarter. Okay. I'm just still reading. I'll put it on the stream actually.
I'm assuming that would be early 2009 because it was end 2008. I mean, I was amazed. I was taken in by this, and I was thinking about it the other day. How did a whole nation get convinced that like something that was very much a US-based banking crisis that affected the world was somehow the fault of Gordon Brown and like basically having to make the world's trickiest decision? Which I personally, I actually think that the decision he had to make, this is not being a defender of New Labour by any stretch of the mark, the decision he had to make of, right, do I basically let everything collapse, retain some money in the coffers, or do I have to get rid of the whole lot, keep the banks up who are basically threatening to take everything and the kitchen sink down with them if they go down, including people's savings, pensions, everything? So he ended up making a decision that was probably really fucking hard to make, and then spent the rest of his term being criticised for bankrupting the country. It's like, hang on a minute, because that's like, it's a bit like
you bankrupt the country either way, right?
What's that?
You bankrupt the country either way. It's just
exactly, yeah, because it's exactly. But you bankrupt it via government, or you bankrupt it via the private sector. So basically, it's the whole premise. It's been said a million times. It's the whole Noam Chomsky, socialize the losses and privatize the profits. So if the banks if that had gone down, that would have been like the whole, probably like the 1929. The reason the 1929 depression was so bad is because there was no regulation in place and there was no follow-up for many, many years in the States, especially, until FDR came in and went, right, I am going to take the government coffers and I'm actually going to put programs in place that means you don't, if you get fucked over by a bank, you will not like starve. You won't just be left with nothing.
Brown, what would you have done?
if I was Brown, you know what? It's really difficult to say. I mean, being belligerent, I would have said, probably would have done a public address, whether it got me out, but I would have liked to have people on my side on the way out as I left, say, like, I have basically been given an ultimatum by the banking sector that say that they are going to take down the country unless we basically open the treasury to them. Said, I just want you to be clear with that information, do like a public, the whole, the address to the nation type thing, and say that I have to think about it. I would have put that out in a statement and then just left it to simmer. Put that out and left it to simmer.
So yeah,
I would have been like, right, so the public
has to be made.
now knows, yeah, exactly. The public knows that I have to make this choice, and they know that we've basically been blackmailed by a bunch of American financial
as if we're in it together.
Is where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We are all this together. This is a hard decision to make. It's like, obviously, if I give the money out of the treasury, there'll have to be massive cuts.
Mm-hmm.
That is an option. The other option is that they will basically they will basically crash every currency, every economy in the world, and then go down in a ball of flames and take us with them. So those are the options. I have to, I let you know that we are deliberating what the best thing is, and then let the press run with it. And then, to be honest, like, would you, if you were the average person picking up a copy of the Mirror or the whatever the next day, and it says, Brown puts ultimatum, doesn't stand behind our glorious bankers, do you think the average person
sounds like referendum.
Would still be convinced, like, oh no, he'd be doing wrong thing? Yeah, it's like, if you frame it, it's like framing it as in, how would any newspaper spin the fact that giving banks loads of money is a good thing?
Mm-hmm.
Bear in mind, they're in power. They're not now. The whole premise of World Labour would bankrupt the country is only there because they're not in power. When they actually had no choice but to open the treasury and just let them take whatever they wanted, that was, how would they have, it's almost like I'm sort of wondering what right-wing kind of approach could you take if you're writing a newspaper column, like, let the banks bankrupt us, that's the honourable thing to do, and that would mean that Gordon Brown would be right. So how would you have, how would they have taken that? I don't know how they would have taken that if he'd gone out and done a public address and gone, the finances are in the shitter. We've been given an ultimatum by essentially like foreign, venture capitalists who've ruined countless lives to say that, we are in a bind. And the option is to give them all the money from the treasury that is by rights yours and you've added to it. Or they are planning on taking us all down with them, and this is the result. This is what's going to happen. You could have graphics. Here's what will happen to the pound. Here's what will happen to your savings. Here's what will happen to your pension if they basically are left on their own.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that was missing, just information, wasn't it? Really, like.
Yeah, well, that's why I mean, I found. I don't know, it was one of those, when Facebook, brings up on this day, you shared this photograph on that day, whatever. It brought up in 2011, I shared a video, which I actually pretty sure I never watched, which is like how Labour completely ruined the economy. And like, I was of the mindset back then that, that they were basically thoroughly responsible. And as time has gone on, I'd be like, no, wait a minute. Gordon Brown probably did the absolute best thing he could have done at the time. And was actually quite a very careful economist. Apparently, he used to drive his, I was reading about him, and he used to drive his assistants nuts because he said, I want cost breakdowns for every program that we ever introduce to know how much it costs. If it's worth it, I'll go for it. But I don't want anybody getting me on saying that I just, I spend irresponsibly with the Treasury. So,
yeah, I mean, it's probably true. I feel like Gordon Brown was quite obviously an intelligent guy, and economics was kind of his thing. I still feel like him and New Labour do not come out of this blameless. Like, for me, they did.
No.
And like, the stats will show you that they probably spent, well, not probably, they did spend more money than they actually had. Like, it's one of those perfect storms, because I think obviously banks, and I mean not like high street banks, although it was them as well, but like investment banks and all that all of those sort of companies clearly behaved irresponsibly.
High street banks got tied into eventually, especially in America.
They're always the ones that people think of when you're like the banks, and you think of like, Royal Bank of Scotland, HSBC, and stuff like that. Like, those guys were the first people to feel the first wave, but it was the big investment banks that really fucked up, and they were the ones that caused it. And then I think there were several like knock-on factors from there. The fact that like I think the UK government probably had overspent. And then you look to Europe, and Europe had brought in the euro, which was seriously unstable for quite a long time. And like I've always said, I've always thought the euro was much more a political project than it was a well thought out economic one. And then I guess this brings you back onto Brexit, because you saw the massive bailouts of Portugal, Ireland, who else? By the EU? Portugal, Ireland, Spain, maybe Spain. There were some big bailouts, and that was essentially a result of probably overspending, but also the fact they had a very weak and unstable currency. And then I think British people, probably Germans as well, start to get pissed off, saying why are we bailing out different countries for the EU's mistake? And it kind of brings it full circle. It starts to, I think you start to see a lot more of a kind of chain of repercussions for all of these mistakes by various different people. It's just a perfect storm that these things often are a result of lots of different things going wrong at the same time, but in an interconnected way.
And sometimes it's easier to put like a big boogeyman on one thing rather than the thing that, I think if we look at the thing that the first domino that fell, that was the US housing market. And then as a result of that, and then the banks, then basically then all the people defaulting on the mortgages, then the fact that all the mortgages are bundled up like 18 ways to like one person, it's like bundled up through 18 different companies, and they're all betting, and then the fact that then they start betting on them to fail, so then the market starts working in that. I mean, that's fucking ridiculous. The fact that is even like allowed, like the fact that things like that is even allowed in the sectors. Like, so what you're doing is you're basically putting somebody's like an honest everyday person's livelihood in like, this person's basically going to roll a dice, and tomorrow your house can fuck off because they lost a bet. It's like, well, like it's such bullshit. But then, ironically, out of that, the Tea Party movement grew.
So, sorry, you broke up a bit there.
Right as Obama got elected, Tea Party.
Oh, the Tea Party.
That sort of Glenn Beck's mad. Who ironically were against taxes, and it's like they literally were. The comedian Lewis Black had a great line, and this was probably about 2012, 2013. He said, "I do admire Tea Party and the organisers of such, because it's clearly an astroturfing thing. It's clearly very wealthy people trying to manipulate very poor people that they shouldn't be taxed. And if you can convince, like, some redneck slob to get out of the caravan and like spend money going on a bus to Washington, D.C. to hold a big sign saying, for God's sake, don't tax the rich, tax me." It's like, that's fucking leadership. If you can manage to do that. And they literally missed, like, they were angry at all. It was a humongous, brilliant movement that mobilized people to be angry at exactly the wrong thing. Like, being angry at a tax system where it's like banks were the reason, people losing their homes, not because of the tax system, but they lost them because people were having, like literally playing like, heads or tails on whether someone would default on their mortgage. So brilliantly organized movement, and fantastically astroturfed by the Koch brothers and all that. But seemingly, I don't know, I think it's dissolved into the generic Trump supporter, I think, in that kind of stream.
I find it so interesting, this, like, and we've gone so far off Brexit, I'm aware of that, but like, I find the Tea Party like movement so interesting in that, so like I don't know like how much you know about like my political views, Oscar, but I'm like a pretty liberal kind of libertarian guy, like not on everything, and I think I take like quite a lot of influence actually from all ends of the political spectrum, and there are some things I'm more progressive on and some things that I'm more like conservative on.
But you're very well-rounded.
Like the things the Tea Party would agree with or would say they stand for would be basically things that I stand for as well. So like liberty, low government intervention, like low taxes all round, those sort of like key principles would fairly like clearly underline like what I believe in. But what I found really interesting is that like that's how the Tea Party started. Like I actually don't know exactly where it came from. Like Ron Paul's probably got like is like considered like the grandfather like of the movement. But like
he had a hand in it.
Weird how it went from that to you're right. Like I think the Tea Party guys, like all the people, like the grassroots supporters, and the Tea Party was an incredibly well organized like grassroots movement, pretty much. But like it suddenly went from the key messages being low tax, small government, low government intervention, basically allow people to live their lives with as little kind of intervention from the government, to the Trump style of like the Trump message, which is like, it's the opposite. If you're like a conservative guy like me, you look at Trump, or I do, and I think this guy isn't a conservative because he's not. Like, he's always spent loads of fucking money that the country doesn't have. Like, he wants to actually be far more involved in people's lives than probably a hell of a lot of Democrats do. Like, and
there's on the social element as well, which is very much that's the whole thing. I think the general Republicans can never square with themselves. They just say, just leave us alone. Well, what about marriage equality? No, we want to enforce that you can't have that. Okay, yeah. What about the right to choose? No, you can't have that either. Well, what about the right to birth control? No, we want to actively make sure you can't have that. Well, what about legal? But no, we're going to actively make sure you're never allowed that. It's like, so what part of this? Like, that's where I sometimes go, yeah, I kind of understand the libertarian argument, but I find that a lot of the time where it comes from is usually companies, like, it's usually coming from a sort of sector of the corporate industry that wants to basically, if it's paying well under the amount of tax that it should be paying, then it wants to use that movement to kind of push to pay nothing at all, to not contribute to the coffers of the country, which allows it to do its business in the first place. But then they also want to pushing for, this is where you and me might jar a little bit, which is sad because you seem like a nice chap. But the whole premise of like, well, one thing that an argument that I've heard about the libertarian thing is, oh, well, if you just leave them to it, they'll do the right thing. It's like, when they literally are being given like more tax breaks and more like deregulation, they're already pushing to deregulate it further across the board of all these large employers, all the biggest, the FTSE 500 companies that are very, what you might call industrial heavy. Why do you think if you just removed it, they wouldn't basically make the average worker a slave? So overnight,
I don't think that. Like, there are some things that annoy me that like libertarians will like sweep under the rug. Like, it pisses me off that the likes of Google, Amazon, Facebook do not pay their tax. Like, pay your fucking tax. Everyone has to, and the amount that would be generated by that tax, like, I'd be happy
they did that
spending that money.
And if they did that, sorry, I do apologize for interrupting. If they did that, like, you wouldn't need these tax rises on the average person.
So that's exactly
to fill any holes. You wouldn't need to do it, because you go, look, we're not going to raise your taxes. We are going to keep the tax system the same. We're not going to raise a penny more. We're just going to say these massive entities don't pay a penny. You pay more than them. Yep. Why do you think that that's acceptable? If they paid everything we want to do to, plug holes in child poverty, plug holes in healthcare, plug holes in infrastructure, we could do it. And these people,
that's not their priority, though, is it?
Your money. Yeah, these people who want your money for your services are not willing to pay back into the community. Like Amazon in particular, literally go to cities, hold them to hostage, and go, right, what are you going to give us for bringing our minimum wage, misery factory to your town? And they go, oh, well, we'll literally give you money from the tax coffers. Like, keep going, and we'll let you do whatever you want with your employees. And then eventually they'll go, we're not moving to your town after all. But then they've spent all this money prepping them for an Amazon fulfillment center or what have you. And then they end up not bringing it to town. The town's wasted all its money. The town's offered up financial incentives, and then they go, move on to the next one. In terms of enriching himself, Jeff Bezos and his strategy, it's bloody clever. Because it does hold, it holds countries, it holds industries, it holds sort of what you might call government, small government, local authorities to ransom, essentially. That's what really pisses me off, and then doesn't put anything into the coffers afterwards.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Like, so my philosophy on this would be like, I'm not against the big corporations paying tax. Like, first of all, let's just get them paying what they should pay in tax. That would be a really good start. But I also think you probably could go a bit further, and actually these companies that are like, they're bigger than like multinational companies. They're even bigger than that now. They're bigger than banks. They're they are worth more than
like more sway than governments.
Some countries, like, just get them paying their tax for a start would be a good thing. I wouldn't also be against
close those loopholes, don't you?
A little bit more because they earn so much. But I think, and if you did that, then you could fulfill some of my like personal objectives, which would be basically, I don't think anyone who's earning under like 30 grand should pay any tax. Like, it contributes so little in tax that it basically does nothing. But to that individual, it's a lot of money that could be the difference between getting a mortgage or doing whatever you want to do that can help you progress your life. Like, I don't really feel that anyone earning under 30 should be paying tax because basically it does nothing. But for that individual, it does a lot. But you can only really do that if you basically make the big companies pay their way. Like, and I think they should. I'm not someone who thinks that, like, see a lot of stuff about like, billionaires shouldn't exist. Like, I think billionaires, it's fine if they exist. I just think they should pay their way. Like, if you are a billionaire, you should pay your taxes. Like, it pisses me off when libertarians will use the argument. They'll just go like, oh, but it's smart, you do the same thing. But it's like, yeah, but I'm not a billionaire, so like I can.
Most of you never will be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
a small amount.
99.99% of you never will be a billionaire. Do you know what? That is a really interesting take. I've never heard that take on it of like going up to a certain level. I think that's if that actually could pull me out of my slightly socialistic bubble there, possibly. To the idea that if you're earning under 30,000, you don't pay any tax. I think that would be quite a good incentive to kind of like, if you can put people, the whole idea of what you said about putting people on the housing ladder, I think is a really interesting idea. Because I do think like if the average person, right, okay, so it's calculator time. So, right, so let's say that you're under the margin. So let's say that you're earning a decent wage. So you're earning 30,000 a year, but there's no income tax for you. So let's divide that by 12. So if you have an average,
you'd still pay your national insurance, I guess.
Yeah, of course. Still paying national insurance. So let's say us minus 12% on that, right? So on 30,000 a year, be taking home £2,200 in pocket after your national insurance.
That sounds is that right? It sounds a lot, but it could be about right. I'm sure it is about right.
Is it minus 12% of the I can't remember what it is. Is it 12% tax across the board for your NI contributions? I can't remember. Or is that 12% within the tax that is in it?
Within the tax, I think would be right.
Oh, within the tax, right. Yeah. So then possibly you'd walk away with a little bit. So like if it was to be taxed to that, so maybe they'd have to come up with a new tax bracket. But yeah, that would be interesting because when I was earning, when I got my pay raise on my last job, which literally was a pay raise I got like 2 days before I was sacked. 12 days before I was made redundant. So I got one paycheck that, basically had that amount in it. And I think my take home was something like, with my student loan deductions and my tax deductions, something like $1,550 or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I was just looking for, I'll preface it, I live at home with my old man, my brother, but that's partially a reason because my brother has Asperger's and my old man can't cope without a woman in his life, so he makes do with me because otherwise he wouldn't be able to.
You're very beautiful. I'm sure you make up amazingly.
Yeah, it's like he wouldn't fucking be able to he'd walk out he'd walk in from work and leave his car running with the door open and forget to wear trousers if I didn't fucking tell him to do it. No. So if I leave, I know his life would fall into.
He comes back in the door and he's like, "Hi, honey, I'm home."
So what's for dinner? It said it's called go out and fucking make it yourself, but.
The other things that I think you would get by doing this as well is something that I don't really feel gets talked about enough is that basically none of us put enough into our pension. We're going to live for ages. Definitely. I'm probably not because my lifestyle is terrible, but people are getting 1 to
3% or something.
And you're either halfway through a good life or at the very end of a bad one.
Yeah, exactly that. But we're going to live longer, but we are putting less into our pensions because our pension schemes are so much worse than they used to be, even as recent as kind of 10 years ago. Look at 30 years ago, pension schemes were incredible, so good. If you're retiring now, you should probably have a final salary pension, all that sort of stuff. Our pensions are worse, and we're gonna have to work and live for longer as well. If you didn't tax people, and you put some sort of government like encouragement to, I don't know, some sort of tax relief if you put more into your pension, or you had schemes to maybe help people buy houses, like the return that the economy would get on not taxing would be so much bigger, because you'd have more people on the housing market buying cars, buying even just spending on shit they want,
creating
holidays,
businesses,
whatever it is. Like it would just be such a good like stimulus. And like it's one of the things, one of the very few things that the Conservatives and the Lib Dems did in coalition, where I was like, this was actually a good idea, is they raised the, so you know you have like tax-free salary allowance. It goes from so it was $8,000 I think when the Lib Dems and the Tories were in coalition.
Now
and
11, isn't it?
I think it's higher, man. I think it's like 12 or 16. It's a hell of a lot higher, and I was just
really?
What now? What the national insurance is 12%?
No, the tax-free salary.
Tax. Okay.
Oh, so it's 12,500. So it went from 8 to 12.5, and I was just like, it's small, but I still think it's a really good thing. Like again, people who are earning 15, 16 and not contributing enough to the economy to make any kind of tangible difference in terms of spending on public services or anything else. So just let people keep their money. Like let people keep their money, spend it on what they want, hopefully give them a bit more money to kind of progress in their career or life or whatever ambitions they have, and get people spending. It was one of the few things that the Tories and Lib Dems did in coalition where I was like, yep, this for me is a good idea and a no-brainer. And they did it, so fair play.
You could, I mean, that's the idea of having that as like a starter bracket, I think is good. The argument would always be, well, millionaires will pretend that by the end of the deductions they've only got 30,000 a year. But I think that would be quite difficult to. That would really take some amazing skill of accounting to pull off if you were like on kind of.
Don't manage it somehow.
Like if you were on like hedge fund manager wages, but you acted like by the time everything's spent, you only got 30K left in the bank. Or if but I think that's an interesting idea, Joe. I honestly think that like, so you reckon that like keep the taxes on the wealthy, possibly the very wealthy, even higher. Yeah. So what you're arguing for is almost like a much more egalitarian tax system, which is, it's almost more concentrated where it needs to be, and almost non-existent where it serves no purpose. That's what I think.
Until we fix things,
almost like government. Like it's so for me as well. This would extend to like small businesses. I don't really think small businesses, if like as in startups, should be taxed at all either, because hopefully you don't tax them, they start to make money
until they reach a certain amount,
contributing more to the economy.
Yeah,
it's like it's the same it's the same thing there. I think once you're established, you pay your way, and you could possibly, once you're doing really well, then you can input even more because you can afford to input even more. But if we want to become a kind of country and economy where we've got loads of tech startups doing really innovative, cool things, like you've got to have tax breaks to make it worthwhile. Like I'm a libertarian, but I also see some government spending as being efficient. Like if that spending can in turn make more money for the economy, for the country, I think it can make sense. Like
if you get a return on your investment, you have to think like
there are things like that. Yeah, we don't need to spend the amount that we spend on the military, for example. We probably don't need to spend the amount that we spend on funding GCHQ or whatever else it is. I just think there's certain things that we could cut and make so much more money from. But I'm happy to see money spent where it's money well invested. And I'm happy to see tax where it's justified. But for basically low-income people, low-income families, low-income businesses, like I don't see the point. I just don't see the point in doing it.
It is interesting because do you remember? I'm just suddenly check. I'm just looking at the rack behind you, Joe. I think are you in the military in some way?
No.
Or do you just have an interesting Do you just happen to have an interesting collection of what look like uniforms from this distance?
Oh, you know what? They're actually denim jackets, but there actually is also you can see the camo jacket, right?
There is I can see the camo jacket. So because I saw that and I thought, oh, Simon's been talking about getting someone from the militry onto the podcast, onto the stream. I was like, oh, maybe this is
military.
He kind of didn't get clearance apparently, but
come through.
Well, no, I think he wanted
boo,
to, but I spoke to him. He might join another time, but yeah.
If I could get my mate who's in Brunei for the services to come and join this thing, he would be absolutely brilliant, because if he's give him a couple of tinnies and he'll let you know about it. Like and fun enough, he would tell you that he says the military literally, if you give them money, they'll spend it in all the wrong places.
Yeah.
So they cannot spend it on things that are effective, much like the American military, to the point where the Pentagon, with Trump's raise, increased funding. They said, we are fine. We don't need any more. Stop giving it. We absolutely do not need any more money. If you need it in anything, it's veteran help. It's veteran relief. We do not need another plane that by the time it's finished, like $2 trillion later, we're not going to use. Like, it's just
it's the same here. Like, BAE Systems is like, I mean, the term like military industrial complex does start to sound a bit Alex Jones, but like it's a thing. Like the military industrial complex, or like the military in like provision of military equipment, like is one of the biggest industries out there. And like they basically dictate to governments about what they should or shouldn't be spending money on. Like BAE do it. They will tell the government, you're buying 20 Euro fighter jets. We've already started making them. You're going to buy them. And then the government's like, well, actually, these planes aren't that good. We don't really need them. But the Saudis really like them, and they're really trustworthy.
Yeah.
Guys. So
yeah, exactly. They never do anything shady.
Fucking Liz Truss, isn't it?
Yeah. Like
it's million, what's a few million bad apples?
There was a really good documentary. I think it might have been a Vice documentary, and they basically went to like a trade show for companies that create sell guns, missile systems, all of that sort of stuff. And I think it's like the biggest trade show like anywhere in the world. And like the whole point was like, if you want to see the military industrial complex like in a physical form, because it's kind of this like it's this thing that goes on that no one really sees because it's so kind of like, I don't know, like backroom deals and stuff like that. But I guess you can go to one of these trade shows and you can see the big companies and the stuff that they're like exhibiting. And like, it's just phenomenally insane. Like some of the technology is so cool. Like
definitely. It's all these massive drones and all these kind of different types.
I found the documentary you're talking about. It's called The Business of War.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the acronym is, it's only 20 minutes long, so it's probably quite easy to digest. SOFX. So I don't know whether that's the name of the trade show. And hopefully this won't be through. I don't know.
Yeah. It's
it's
crazy. But yeah,
so it's like Comic-Con for missiles.
Comic-Con for missiles is exactly the right description.
It stands for Special Operations Forces Exhibition Conference, and here's the blurb under the video. SOFEX is where the world's leading generals come to buy everything from handguns to laser-guided missile systems. It stands for Special Operations Forces Exhibition Conference, and it's essentially a trade show where anybody with enough money can buy the most powerful weapons in the world. And Shane Smith did the whole thing. I think this is so there's no sign of Gavin McGuinness in that one.
I think this was Vice after Gavin McGuinness decided to become.
How long was he with Vice? Because I remember Vice being a sort of thing that bubbled under the surface when I was at uni, which was like 08 to 11.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I'm assuming that like the rift started because Gavin McGuinness started to have more sort of right-wing leanings than.
It was exactly
what's his face?
Yeah, because I was watching, like my mate introduced me to Vice documentaries also when I was at uni, just a couple years later, so 2010 to 13, and we started watching everything from like the one where there's like this island full of snakes and like the suicide forest in Japan and stuff like that. But I think at the time, Gavin McGuinness was probably still involved. I think he started doing some like blog posts and stuff. My understanding is that he started saying, because like he's the guy who's like credited with inventing hipsterdom, I think, basically. And then he started saying like, I'm glad all of the hipsters in Brooklyn are white, and everyone was like,
yeah, there's just like everybody else is just backing out.
You didn't really have to.
Like, Near him is just backing out of frame.
Yeah,
Homer Simpson into the hedge,
hiding behind their beards. Arabica, and like, yeah, I think he just started to go like steadily off the rails, and now he's like, I even remember watching, like, he was on the Joe Rogan show, but I think this was quite a while ago as well.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Must have been, I guess, like before he was like an out and out like white nationalist. And even though I thought you're saying some stuff that, like, in fact, almost everything you're saying, I think is pretty bad here, man. Like, I'm even like, Joe Rogan will invite a lot of people onto his show, but
Joe Rogan
the time
because that's
this is probably the furthest you've gone with a guest like this.
Did he push back at all on that? Because I haven't seen that one. Because the thing is, like, I exist in this weird world where I really like a guy called Anthony Cumia, who used to be on this thing called the Opie and Anthony Show, which was like, it was satellite radio where they were allowed to do anything they wanted. It was basically the progression of Howard Stern, but like they were given carte blanche, so you can swear, you can basically like put porn on, you can get comedians in, you can have like hookers and strippers. Oh, mate, if you honestly, I would have to send you links of it, because also it's what you also hear is like most of your favorite comedians coming up via like spending. So they would review anything. Like there's one where they review 8-track porn, and it's like it's just 5 hours of the funniest shit you've ever heard. Like people like Bill Burr like got their break on it. Jim Jeffries, Louis C.K. I mean, for all that, you know, Louis C.K.'s obviously done some pretty heinous shit, but he was a funny fucker.
Yeah, really
he's on it as well. Patton Oswalt, all those people, Colin Quinn. And there's just, it's basically what it is. It's like, if you go onto it on YouTube, it's just hours of free comedy that's really, really good. And it's really, really riffy. Oh, it's honestly, Opie and Anthony. There's probably like a best of clip somewhere. And he was always like, Anthony Cumia was always like, kind of like, it was like the Opie was the host. He was kind of neutral and a bit dopey. And then Anthony Cumia was quite clever, but he was always like, kind of, it was like through his kind of very much his sort of the non-religious right winger. So ran in with the Republicans, didn't stand for the whole religious thing, wasn't too mad on, you know, like kind of like sexual repression, but he was all about don't tax me, don't take my guns. I've got a beef with black. He had a massive beef with like most black people dating on some experiences he had at school, but he is nominally funny and he's got a massively quick wit. And then he got sacked because he was taking photos late at night in New York, and a hooker who was black like literally came on like within his photo shot and like smashed him around the head with a handbag, and he went on a rant about her, but they took it as like he's getting angry at the woman because she's black and getting in his face, but it was more the fact that she like smashed his camera and she kind of thought that she was being photographed as some sort of blackmail thing, and all he was trying to do was take photographs of, but he put his foot in it and basically used all the wrong terminology on Twitter, so the next day he basically lost his job.
He's already been building a strong terminology on Twitter, to be fair.
I don't do Twitter.
I think pre-Trump, like, there's a lot of things you probably couldn't get away with on Twitter with the terminology that he used. So I think it was more of a case of a very, very, you know, the biggest broadcasting thing, like Sirius XM, which is basically their digital radio equivalent platform, when, you know, we can't keep him on. But because he'd already built a studio in his house with his shit tons of money, he just basically kept broadcasting. And then he does do like interviews with people, and he's very funny, but he's kind of like given Gavin McInnes like his platform on I can't remember what it's called, but like it's one of those things where like if you're watching it and it's just something about pop culture or whatever, it's very funny, and he seems like an immensely likable guy. But you just know that if you're out on a drink with him in the evening, you said one wrong thing, and he'd be armed, because he's been arrested multiple times for like waving his gun around in public because he's gotten drunk again and like firing it into the air.
Jeez.
He loves his guns. He loves his guns.
I saw that the Joe Rogan show had like I think since he signed with Spotify, I think he
want to censor him.
Moved quite a lot of the far more controversial people, like Gavin McInnes being one, like that.
Yeah,
show.
There's a list, wasn't there, of the amount of people that he had to remove or wasn't allowed on there, or I guess.
How many was it?
I think it's like 30 something at least. Yeah, I mean, compared
to. Did he have to remove shows? Yeah. Did he have to remove them from?
Yeah, like Louis Theroux is gone.
What's happened with Spotify?
It wasn't only
Why
political.
But,
yeah, exactly. I don't think it was primarily political kind of culling, if you want to call it that, but it was Yeah, I'll see if I can get the list up for you.
What I get pissed off at is because what I noticed when we did that first stream, right? And I haven't got the Twitch up, so I don't know whether anyone's commenting on the Twitch, but when we did that first one, and there was that girl who I think otherwise was like probably very much like within what I would call yours and my political remit or mindset. But she was of the mind that you can never ever talk to anybody you vaguely disagree with. Or, even if you're there to push back. And I thought that is it's just such a non-productive way of doing things. Because if someone really has a shitty viewpoint, yeah, but just like the whole thing. Yeah. Oh shit! It's coming into my headphones. Hang on a second.
Yeah. No, I
but listen,
like I think it's one of the worst things about our political discourse now is that people won't talk to people they disagree with. Like even if it's on small things, like it's just become a case of that's not an opinion. Like we can't talk about that. Well, the best thing to do if you want to convert someone to your opinion is have like an open conversation. Like I think you'll find like most people when you sit down, most people want to achieve roughly the same things. Like most people, the vast majority of people want a fairer society. They just want to achieve it in different ways. And like the worst
ways,
is shut people out of conversations or say, I'm not going to have that conversation. Like the best thing you can do, I think, is make sure you just like have a conversation with someone you really disagree with. You will, if you do it in the right way and don't descend into shit flinging and shouting at each other, you'll find some common ground. And there will be things that you come away thinking, actually, yeah, you know what? I at least see where they're coming from on this, where I didn't before, even if you still disagree. And you can, that's the process of change. Is you've at least sowed some seeds of why people think the way they do. Like it's one of the things that annoys me most about our political discourse is that like we seem to have lost the ability to have these conversations and these debates. I don't mind if someone has a different opinion to me. I'd almost like it's more interesting to hear from people who have a different opinion to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think
it's like you're sitting in an echo chamber doesn't do you any good because I think that's for people at my end. And it's all within the same year with Brexit being achieved and Trump being voted in. Michael Moore was one of the few people who said, "Don't underestimate it because you don't like the man. Don't assume that you not liking something is like a cast iron guarantee that they won't achieve their goals." And I think I've mentioned it before on this podcast, which is the worst thing you can do is because you don't like something is to deny the popularity of it. Me saying nobody likes Trump is a stupid thing. And I shouldn't, but me saying it, that would be completely redundant because it's like, look how many millions of people still say they would vote for him despite everything you've seen.
Yeah.
That's like a few million people, even if it is in a country of 300 million, 30, 40 million or whatever the number might be is not a small amount of people.
For a multitude of reasons as well.
For a multitude of reasons, yeah, exactly. There may be people in the middle who try not to do politics, as it were, but then they go, oh, well, I got a tiny bit more in my tax bracket, and somebody told me he got peace between two countries that have actually never been warring. So I believe that I'm not going to look into it too deeply. I'll probably vote for it. There are some people who will probably go to a voting booth and whoever the last person who talks to them says for them to vote for, they'll do it. Because it's like, oh, well, okay, well, that person said that, or my dad has always voted that way, or my mum's always voted that way. So
on the Joe Rogan, on the Joe Rogan thing, it looks like most of the ones missing are things like Sargon of Akkad and Alex Jones.
Who was the first one?
Sargon of Akkad. Have you not heard of him?
Sargon? Oh, that's the
British guy. Yeah,
he ran as a UKIP guy.
He's not very.
I listened to that one. I went through a thing where I was going right because I've got the iTunes stream. He's still streaming to iTunes, so I'm not entirely sure why Apple Podcasts. So I'm not
exclusive. It's just not quite yet. I think
is it going to be exclusive?
Maybe January 2021.
Right.
One of the YouTubers that I watch, Bosch, he basically is having.
I'm assuming the archive's still going to be there.
Yeah, I think nothing's going to be removed.
Remove it from YouTube, surely.
But I think they will stop up.
Nothing's going to be added.
Point. Yeah, that's what I think.
Right, that's going to piss. How am I going to get that on my TV? I'm going to have to buy another fucking smart TV now. I'm going to have to get the one that's got. It's just like, hey, I've just moved up a platform. Yeah, we're moving that off of here over the up. For God's sake. yeah, but the whole thing is, I went through a thing where I was working a certain job and I was on the road all the time, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna torture myself because I'm unhappy. You know, I'm not unhappy enough, and I'm going to listen to all the people I'm likely to disagree with. So I listened to his thing with Jordan Peterson. I listened to his thing with Ben Shapiro. I listened to a guy called Peter Schiff, who was, I think, a libertarian economist who believes there should be no social safety nets whatsoever. And I started off listening to that, and then by the end of it, I was like, "Oh, fuck you, man! I hate you! Like you're horrific." It's like, you should buy all my gold. And by the way, if there's another recession, what we should do is we should cull the elderly. You know, we should just, like, anyone who's disabled or whatever, they're getting in the way of profit. Oh, he's a fucking awful guy.
So Ben Shapiro, like, I'm going to make myself so unpopular here, but I quite like Ben Shapiro. Like, I actually think, like, sometimes he says some shit where I'm just like, I completely disagree with you. But on quite a lot of things, I think he can be reasonably fair. Like, it's kind of weird with Ben Shapiro because there are two sides to Ben Shapiro. There's like the internet meme side of like Ben Shapiro, where it'll be like Ben Shapiro destroys from whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit like
capitalized. The destroyed is all block capital.
Yeah, and it's just a bit like, this is just, you are just trying to generate traffic to your YouTube site, to your YouTube channel. But then there's also like quite a lot of, I mean, the other side of Ben Shapiro is there's really in-depth conversations that he has with a lot of people. Like, there's a really good like hour-long conversation on his channel where he sits down and talks with Andrew Yang, you know, like the guy.
I love Andrew Yang.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, exactly. They sit down and have a conversation for an hour, and it's brilliant. Like, they find some common ground. Like, they talk about universal basic income, and like there's a bit where Andrew Yang's like, well, you know, it'd be $1,300 for every American, regardless, and you can spend it on whatever you like. And Ben Shapiro's like, oh, that's interesting. You wouldn't make people spend it on certain things. He's like, no. And Ben Shapiro's like, that's an oddly libertarian idea. And they were like, yeah, libertarianism. But yeah, they had like a really good conversation. There is that side to Ben Shapiro where I'm like, he's a little misunderstood, and it's completely because
he misunderstands a lot of things as well, which is quite a big part of why.
I feel sorry for his wife at times.
Oh, not all that.
It's because the whole WAP thing. I was like, "Are you doing this yourself?"
Yeah, it sounds
wife
like.
Must be sitting there with her head in her. And like, don't do this, Ben.
Yeah, like
it's like, yeah. Well, you know that lubricated vaginas are an anomaly. Like, oh, Ben. Oh no. Oh, come on, dude. No, don't do this to yourself.
This is it. Like, sometimes it's just like, dude, this is like, culture is not your area of expertise. Like, really, you are an Orthodox Jew. Like, you have your life. It's probably a life that he loves, and fair play to him. But like, he is not a guy who enjoys fun, I don't think. So talking about like, culture, and especially pop culture, is something where he's going to absolutely tie himself up like every single time. Like, don't do it.
I can't imagine him being invited to a lot of parties ever. I'm going to say that he's probably like, well, you know, we can invite him to this convention, but I highly doubt in a million years ago, do you know who I really want at this kegger? Ben Shapiro. Like, yeah, there's so many more conservative people on the conservative side. You'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'd want him at the, you know, want him at the party. You know, you sort of knew that if you invited George Bush back in the day, he'd probably be the most fun guy at the keg. Ben Shapiro is like, why are they laughing? I don't like that. I don't like people laughing. And then it's like, oh, yeah, it's just like, everybody's being too loud. I'm trying to sleep over here. It's past 9 o'clock in the afternoon, you know. But the whole thing of like, look, Ben, you can, you know, do your international diplomacy, do your what have you, you know, but don't get involved in the whole culture thing. It's really not your bag, you know. But what I find interesting, he seems very polite when he's on Rogan. Like, he sort of almost backs down a little bit. Like, what I noticed about him is he sort of looks at someone like Joe Rogan with a bit of deference, and he's not trying to kind of like one-up him or anything. I don't know whether he thinks, oh, this guy's just a big like Hulk who will just whatever the last person who's whispered in his ear, he will sort of listen to.
Which is
because I find that I mean, exactly. Like, if he's got someone like someone from my neck of the woods, like Carl Kalinske or Yuga or someone like that, or let's say David Pakman, and he will go, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea, man. I just don't understand why we can't all be that way. And then literally get somebody, Ben Shapiro comes back on and go, yeah, you're totally right. I don't understand all these liberals.
He will go from
glad that I can.
I would vote for Trump to I would vote for Sanders like within an hour. Like he would change his opinion.
I understand that, but I totally understood that because I've mentioned it on previous podcasts as into why there was that very distinct split in 2016, and if the DNC hadn't gotten their way, there would be that split.
Yeah.
Now, or possibly that it's the whole that what you had was many years of sort of center rightism by any other name for a while under different guises, essentially economic center rightism anyway. And then you had three voices. You had Bernie Sanders going, everything is shit and I want to fix it by moving forward and basically, bringing in a fairer economic system and pushing to the left. You had somebody like Donald Trump going, everything is shit and I can fix it by moving culturally back to the 50s and sort of like trying to shove everything into reverse and putting in things where basically we start blaming minorities for the problems that we've got. And then Hillary Clinton's in the middle going, well, I don't know what everyone's complaining about. Everything's fine. And if we wanted to change anything, we can't because it's too much hard work.
Yeah.
So you had kind of a lot of people. I remember seeing a lot of interviews with people who would turn up to, like, say, the Republican convention, and they went, if you had to vote for a Democrat, and they go, oh, Bernie Sanders, without a doubt. If he doesn't get in, then I'm voting for Trump. But the whole premise of, oh, Trump's voters were just like stupid redneck racists who were, basically taking time out of inseminating their cousin to basically, put a protest vote in against, against Hillary Clinton, the evil. Like, it was more the fact that Hillary Clinton was so immensely, and I think also, I don't think she realizes how immensely unpopular she is with the left and the right.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, to some degree, so is Biden.
What was that?
Yeah,
Biden
isn't that. Biden isn't that disliked because Biden think like that.
I don't know.
Attachment with. Well, yeah,
his,
but she's
his
not
history.
Disliked by the right. Biden isn't disliked as much by the right wing. Hillary Clinton was massively disliked by the right wing because she wanted to bring in a universal healthcare system in '94, which a lot of people don't seem to remember. And then past then, I can only assume that she resigned herself to never being the person who had ideas on her station. So as long as she could sort of run on attitudinal word salad and like, oh, together stronger and we are women, we can do it together. Like, I think there's a lot of, I think, unfortunately, in politics as well, and it's Little Miss Chaos might disagree with me, and I'm just gonna say there's a lot of women who feel they have to run on the premise of just being a woman in politics, and that's their message. And it's like, but
I think Hillary Clinton
so much
overplayed
stronger.
That. Like, I agree with you. I think Hillary Clinton went way too hard on identity politics. And way too hard on I'm a woman, which absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think she made it too much of a centerpiece of her campaign. I think she offered kind of no palpable actual change. It was very much a kind of continuation. And she spent way too much time
slow drip of not much
chasing celebrity endorsements, like really, and
and that appeals to what you might call the already comfortable suburbanite. They call that like the sort of white centrist, the it's suburban mom voter or whatever. But for the Rust Belt people, there's nothing for them. There was nothing for the people who haven't had a job in Pennsylvania or Kentucky in 30 years.
And those people thought Trump was one of them. Oh yeah, it's fine.
Oh, I'm going to go for a bit. Right, Simon, entertain everyone because I'm going to go and put a whiskey
no worries.
Glass. So just play some games or something because I think this is going to be the this is going to be the I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll wait for Joe to come back and then you can have a thing. But yeah,
it's alright. It's fine. I'm going to have a cigarette and chill out. You can do what you want, mate. This is quite a.
Can you put that elevator? Can you put the old
elevator music?
Hang on a minute. Let me see if. Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll put the Belgian Panema on. I don't know whether it will come. I don't know. It might not even come through the thing, but it's the ultimate.
Just send me the link. I'll put it on.
Elevator. Hang on. So, girl from the girl with the itchy femur. Eponema Muzak version.
You sending me?
There we go. Hang on a second. I'll try. Girl from Ipanema, 10 hours long. Jesus, right, okay. That's a hell of a thing. Oh god, what's that?
I remember listening to. Do you remember that Gandalf? Da, 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 da.
Oh, is it Gandalf in the thing for? Right, I can hear it in my ears. You may not be able to hear it, but
just send me a link, dude. I'll put it on.
Okay, right. So I've got that running in my ears. Right, hang on. There we go. Right, there's a girl from Ipanema. Right, I'll send it to you via Facebook. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry
cool.
to break the fourth wall.
Is my sound still pretty bad?
Sounds fine.
No, yeah, okay.
It's just nice and compressed. We've all literally got different kinds of mics. So I've got a big GDO condenser mic going into a preamp.
I was tempted to get a good streamer mic, but
oh, it's worth it, mate. It's not the mic, it's the preamp that does the does the work.
Okay.
Yeah, so a mic of any particular kind with an XLR lead, like a proper XLR lead, what you actually do need is a decent preamp. So
Joe's back.
Joe,
Are you off?
I've got our interval music. He's adequately sufficed. Right, I'll go and yeah. I'll go and take the tinnies away. I'll be back shortly.
Yeah, in a bit, dude.
So Simon, if an election was called tomorrow in the UK, who would you vote for?
A general election?
Yeah.
As much as I'm actually a Labour member, just to get the Conservatives out, I might have to just vote Labour. As much as I do agree with a lot of, the Green Party has quite a lot of good progressive policies and whatnot. I don't know. I think the main goal at the moment is just to try to get the Conservatives out, just because. Well, look at the fucking state of everything. I don't know how to articulate that, rather than just to be like, it needs to happen. It's everything from the, letting Dominic Cummings do what the fuck he wants, his tax breaks from his land and all this kind of shit. The Russian oligarchs that are like lobbying them, the NHS getting sold, privatized. If say during Brexit, Labour won and went through with Brexit and got a soft deal, I think they'd have more impact on the general public, as in, it would be more of a I don't know, a less damaging, damage control, as Little Miss Chaos suggests.
I think it's a good point, because it brings us back to our initial talking point, which I suppose is, I don't think the Conservatives would be able to spin the economic damage of COVID and a no-deal Brexit and still manage to get votes. Maybe they would, and maybe now that Labour seem to be entering a kind of stage of renewal and reorganisation and making themselves for whatever.
I'm so undecided on Starmer.
Sorry, I'm going to be that annoying person who says, "What did I miss?"
I asked Simon who he'd vote for if an election was called tomorrow. Like, because I still wasn't sure about, like, Simon, whether you're like a more left-wing Labour guy, a more right-wing Labour guy, a kind of centrist, or like, you hear a lot from us, but we don't hear as much from you.
Yeah, no. I like to listen and then add my bits. I'm still quite
the moderator.
I'm the moderator. I like to listen and get a good overview of people's opinions. I do have my own, but there's, I understand that mine is still developing, and it'll always be developing, and I will get things wrong. And so I class myself as more of a progressive social democrat.
I'd probably put myself in the same bracket there, but I would still vote I probably would quite happily vote for Starmer's Labour.
Some of his choices I mean, the thing with sorry, I just want to make this point. Like the thing with like, if Starmer was voted in, and I think a lot of people on the Labour side would hold him to account, not the same way that Conservatives hold Boris Johnson to account. You know, there's a level of.
Not quite sure. Sorry, So people on the Labour bench would hold their own leader to account more than they would hold the opposition to account.
No, more than the Conservative people that voted Conservatives hold Boris to account, and the Conservatives, the people.
They're almost not allowed to, because if you look at anybody who does dissent with Boris Johnson, they're more or less out of the party, like that.
Yeah,
and if you have to give something to,
which is
Jeremy
dangerous.
Corbyn, is that which is because the people go, oh, Jeremy Corbyn's not a leader. Like, he sat and took shit from everybody in his own party and didn't tell them to bugger off. He said, no, you're still part of my party. I'm going to let you in, despite the fact that you dissent from me. And I think that's the other thing that I would say, that my thing of don't deny something's popularity is a stupid idea. I think the whole idea of going that Labour became immensely unpopular after he was elected. What was the voter surge? Like, the amount of people who re-registered with the Labour Party after Corbyn got elected?
2 million I can't remember. It was like loads of young people, wasn't it?
I think it was. I think it had more.
Biggest on record.
Definitely.
Of any kind of
any Labour. Yeah, definitely.
I think it was.
He got first and third, I think it was.
Increase. Because when he got.
That's when I became a member.
An even bigger majority. Yeah, well, I became a member back then as well. I think about about a year or so in. So there was a lot. Oh, hang on, here we go. Right, so here's the official thing. During and after Corbyn's leadership election, there was a large increase in the number of Labour members, on a smidge over 200,000 on 6th of May 2015, the day before the 2015 general election, to 388,000 on the 10th of January 2016. So within that, they added an extra 200,000 members. What's that? Colchester, blimey, yeah. So that's So I think they raised. Oh, that was it. So following the referendum, they added another 100,000 members. After that, which means that their total membership is still standing at over 500,000, which is more active members than I think all the other parties combined.
Labour have always had. I think Labour pretty much always have the most members, because I guess that's fundamentally what Labour is, right? It's like it's supposedly a kind of people-led cooperative kind of movement. I think this, going back to what we were talking about, like, I think changes in government, as in actual the administration that's governing, are often a good thing. A point I made, I think on the last time I was on this, was that I think the Conservatives have become so inept now, because 10 years of Conservative government now, is it 10 years? I think it is.
10 years pretty much on the, just after, just 10 years and a give or take a month.
It was 2010. I think after 10 years of government, I mean, within any political party, you have infighting, you have factionalism, you have all that sort of stuff. And after 10 years, basically, everyone's gone. Like, you go into government and you've probably got, because you've won an election, your key messages have resonated with voters. You've probably go into government with quite a talented group of individuals, and I'd imagine Starmer would be the same. But by now, the Conservative government, like, these people that are on the front benches are not talented individuals anymore. They're people who have played the political game, are young and inexperienced, and there's no political dirt on them. And that's why you have people like Dominic Raab, and you have, I mean, the only two who have survived all of this from, I guess, 10 years ago are Michael Gove, who I think is smart, and I think he is actually intelligent.
He's a bit sinister,
and Boris Johnson, who I do not think is either, but is a
good showman
and has a way with words.
Good front man.
Yeah, good showman, and
raconteur.
I think play the kind of backroom, like, political game as well.
He gets away with stuff, which is what they want.
He has a flair that Jeremy. It's one of those things where Jeremy Corbyn suffered from his lack of being interesting, but my argument for his government was said, I almost don't want a politician to be just like a barrel of fucking laughs, because there's something that's telling me that the more they're concentrating on their, his whole play was just basically like, like kind of easygoing granddad with an allotment. That was, and I think that it's like, I don't need him to be any more than that. I don't want it's like people go, "Oh, voting for this person because it'd be a laugh." It's like you don't vote for the leader of a country because it'd be a fucking giggle, especially if those giggles are coming from somebody's ineptitude at anything they do.
But here's
That's
the
not
thing.
a fucking way to run a country.
But here's the thing: is that people do, whether we like it or not, they do vote for that. Like they do.
Well, I think
they do want a showman. They want a front man. They want someone who I could get a beer with this guy. Like it's not ideal, but it does resonate with voters. Like there's a reason Nigel Farage was popular with a hell of a lot of people. Like he was the guy who came out when politicians were so boring and squeaky clean and would never be seen to be doing the wrong thing. And for everything you can say about Nigel Farage, and you can say a hell of a lot, like he completely like broke the mold. He was the guy who's like, no, I will be seen having a fag. I'll be seen having pints down the local boozer. Like, and people do
he
connect.
Did go against the grain. Yeah, he did. I think that's the whole idea.
He was seen not really as a politician at some points.
Well, I think that part of the left has got a thing to play about like purity.
Oh, have you lost Stu?
I think we have lost him.
Oscar? You're breaking up a bit, mate. We can't hear
you. Test its ability to like people thing. You
Oscar. 2 secs. Oscar, start again because we lost you there.
Did you? Oh, I lost you. I didn't know whether that was. Oh, I thought that was me losing you guys.
No, that's cool.
The sort of annoying aspect of the left is that they've almost put these purity tests up to stop grounded human beings being allowed, say, in the public sector. Like you know that they do feel that there are some people out there who just their day's activity is to go back through somebody's.
They want everyone to be perfect. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what is it? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I can't possibly, that is something that I so embrace now. And it's like Jeremy Corbyn wasn't, but I didn't like people go, oh, so you think the sun shines out of his ass? Like, no, I don't. I think, but in terms of what he represented, the majority of
and his history
he represented for me, and in the fact that he literally was, the most humblest of humble people, I'd say,
and continues to be so.
And continues to be so. Yeah, he hasn't gone off and tried to get fucking book deals out of what he's done. He's just
get jobs with banks and
someone
shit.
who, and then people give me, oh, he's got £1 million home. It's like, yeah, tell me one place in Islington that's like a garage.
Right. That's another issue, the rent.
Yeah, a lockup that hasn't been like even opened in 10 years is going to set you back 600,000 quid.
And also, he's
in Islington
for 30 years on 70, 80 grand. Yeah, he's going to have a few quid in the bank.
Like, exactly. It's like, well, either you say that only Labour politicians all have to get paid nothing and the Conservatives can get paid a lot, or you just say we all have to be paid one thing, but don't fucking like make it. Oh, Boris Johnson made a lot of money because he's successful. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn's a hypocrite. It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. They've all had the same salary. It's just Boris Johnson chose to write for a newspaper that paid him nearly £300,000 a year, of which Boris Johnson said that was a pittance he couldn't live on. £276,000 a year, and he said, and that's fine if Jeremy Corbyn earns literally less than what it takes you into the top tax bracket. That's hypocrisy. It's like I guarantee he gave shitloads of that away to some sort of charity. I guarantee when he bought his house in Islington, it probably cost 3 3/10 halfpenny, in whatever the last year of pre-decimal currency was. and he stayed in. You look at it now and it's dismal. I wouldn't want to fucking live in that house, but he lives there. He's got his little allotment. It's the most British thing. And he said he's got the most British thing in that he's got a fucking allotment. He grows potatoes and shit.
Yeah.
How can you say that he's like some
self-sufficient,
sort of like subversive, Middle Eastern sympathizer, traitor, or whatever? It's like, dude, the guy does what all of my older relatives do.
Yeah, the whole propaganda campaign.
A couple of things. I think first, to some extent that was his downfall. Like he was never aggressive enough. It always felt like he was to some extent like on the back foot.
But when the left went against him. Like, when he brought out the NHS papers and
his own side was more determined to get rid of him than the other side was.
That's what he really struggled with. But Oscar, just going back to your point, I think it was really interesting because it's one of the things that I find frustrating because as someone who I guess would identify as classically liberal, there are things that I believe that have been traditionally sit within what Labour have always represented, ideals around freedom and liberty and civil rights and stuff like that, that traditionally have been things that, you know, the left have fought for more than the right, actually, up until
now
the
it's flipped.
couple of decades. Now it's flipped.
The whole free
And
speech
you're right,
thing.
there is this level of puritanism on the left that I find incredibly frustrating, where I do think there's more censorship and self-censorship from the left, which is to their detriment, because
I think it's
don't say then you don't end up with the showman. You don't end up
there's more internal struggle, you know, conflict in the left. The right seems a bit more I don't know, more not, I wouldn't say sure of themselves, but they're more confident. Yeah, definitely more strategic. Definitely, well, compared to what is it, 87% lies from the Conservatives compared to the 6% of Labour. You know, they've definitely got plans and they know what they're doing.
To a fact checker just for 2 hours of the debate.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then changing it back and then go, well, we didn't know anything about that. No, it just happened to be something that we were well aware that we were doing for those 2 hours of the debate.
I feel the left attack themselves.
This is the thing as well, is I just don't think the left play the game well enough. Like it is a game, like it's real people's lives, but how you win is you do have someone who you have a leader who's a bit of a showman. You say a couple of outrageous things to get a headline, and the left just have completely, it feels to me like they had given up on actually trying to play the game and trying to play the game to win, because they were so careful about being
fighting,
so careful about being right. They almost acted like they'd won the debate. Like, and this was the same for the Brexit referendum. It was the same in the US presidential election 4 years ago. Like, I feel like the left almost acted like, no, we've won the debate. This isn't there to be had anymore.
The moral high ground, almost.
Keep doing our thing, and it still feels like that to me as well. Where there's this assumption that a lot of people on the left, not everyone, obviously, and the right are bad in different ways, but this assumption that we've done our moral due diligence, we've done all this stuff that we know now proves that we are virtuous and we are correct and we are right about these things, that they don't bother actually having the debate, first of all, reaching out to real people and being too afraid to like get their hands dirty as well. And fling a bit of mud and play the game to win. It's what I find.
A couple of milkshakes. Like,
You're absolutely right. When it's like when the Democrats, I think it was the Tom Perez, who's like the head of the DNC or whatever it happens to be. You know, when they were sort of regrouping themselves after Trump won, they were going, oh, when they go low, we go high, and it's like, you have no idea how low they are prepared to go. Like, you can't fight them where you are.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got to go dirty, you'd be like, what you have to say is, well, you excuse them. You know, we're going to do the same thing. So don't hold us to a different standard, because we, you know, like, we did all the right things. You lied, you cheated, you fiddled, you're being accepted for that. So why on earth should we hold ourselves to your standard? If this is where you're going to set the bar, then we'll come down and join you. But we're on the right side and you're on the wrong side. So, you know, it's like, if we have to fight it down here, as long as the goal is getting back up there, that's what matters. And your whole thing, you're completely right about the whole thing. That I think that what is why, like, when I look at The Guardian, I go like, they're kind of trying to report the right thing, but they just can't not do it without wrapping the whole fucking thing in identity politics. You're like, what traditional liberal person should be the coal miner who's been ravaged by, you know, Thatcherism and you know, like,
all the
pensions
and shit. That was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, and
still
like
not paid their pensions.
The neoliberal thing just doesn't appeal to them, because they go, all you're catering for is just a band of people with second homes. They got Volvo SUVs. They've got like the 2.4 children. They go and see all the right arty things. And they read The Guardian. That's like, none of the shit affects me. Like, how are you going to bring me back a job? How are you going to allow it that I can earn a living with, you know, dignity? I can put food on the table. I can more than put food on the table. I want to be out and go and buy like an entry-level new car. I want to be able to like get a small house to live in. This is all I want. And you're literally saying, no, you don't matter. the people that matter are these kind of we want to focus on the people who are only in mixed race marriages, or we want to focus on the people who are struggling with identifying as a fucking lamppost, or we want to focus on the people who their performance art about being a turtle in a man's body isn't being taken seriously, and they're like, fuck this lot. Like, Brexit Party are saying, I'll bring you back a manufacturing job and you'll be able to buy a fucking Austin again. Okay, well, I'll vote for them because they're the only people offering it. They're the only people actually acknowledging that I exist. And that's what Trump did in America. He said,
yeah, Labour lost a lot of people like that.
I'm going to make your jobs fantastic. You know, and it's like, he was talking out of his ass. He actually said, he went to those people. Bernie Sanders, after Trump was elected, went to a Trump like literally across the board, a Trump voting across the board district to Kentucky, and they all said, if you'd been standing and you'd been the candidate, we would have voted for you, but Hillary Clinton offered
I remember seeing
he
that.
said, you're not even worth thinking about. Oh, that is a really good thing. And at the end of it, it's a really sad moment. Someone caught it on their camera phone. It's a woman going like, literally, I don't know what to do. Bernie Sanders just says, just come here. This isn't going to help, but like, if it makes you feel better, and he hugs her, and it's just someone's camera, and it made me cry. And the guy, that is a person who actually gives a fuck about people, and that is a person. And what did MSNBCs do? What did the CNNs do? Oh, Hillary must be feeling so bad. Let's invite her on. She's selling her book. What a brave soul. What a brave warrior. She's now doing a speaking tour. Bernie Sanders got the fuck out of there and went, right, okay, we lost, but now I want to get you good health care. And he's like, oh, he really needs to go. Well, Bernie Sanders needs to go away. It's like, he's the only person. No wonder people are saying CNN lies and MSNBC lies and all that sort of thing, is because they're so focused on identity politics to the hill. I think I may be slightly
a certain
drunk.
narrative, isn't it?
I'm getting rather belligerent.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, but it is a certain narrative. Sorry, this is a Canadian rye along with a little bit of ginger ale.
That sounds awesome.
They're trying to polish every turd. I think that's what it kind of feels like.
But they're trying to put a shine on what amazes me is when I get in. It'll happen in your lifetime. You'll get into an argument on a thread about something with a right winger who could go back to Hillary Clinton and CNN. Like, no, you know what? Fuck them too. Once you say that, they go, I thought you liked them. It's like, nah, fuck them. Like, they're both just as bad. Like, they have a go at Trump for what he does, but then they never go, and here are some better ideas that might benefit you, as opposed to 40 years of fucking, reducing the tax level and reducing regulations and basically licking the arse of the 1%. Like, those are also shitty ideas, and they do it much in the same way that Fox News do it, but they do it with like hey, look, we're still going to have massive corporations dodging tax and sending missiles out to bomb people in countries, but there'll be a woman of color who's also a lesbian in charge of the company. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. It's like, no, it's the same shit. It's like, that shouldn't exist anyway.
Yeah.
But why are you putting some sort of woke identity
it's kind of like
politics thing
using the right tactics against themselves, almost like it's.
That is exactly what it is. Sorry,
there was a really interesting article on the BBC the other day, and it was basically talking about of the demographics within the UK who are least likely to basically go to university and get good jobs. It is white working class boys are the least likely to go to university of any demographic, of any race, gender, whatever it is. They are the worst performing group. It doesn't get reported on that much.
Wait, is that like the percentage wise of?
As a percentage, white working class boys compared with, I guess, black working class boys or black working class girls or Asian working class, etc. So within that economic background, they still perform far worse than any other race, basically.
Sounds about right.
It's really interesting actually, because I didn't know this until fairly recently, and I read this article on the BBC, and they were basically saying how, I guess, a lot of the conversations now that are happening, and good conversations to be happening around I guess critical race theory and stuff like toxic masculinity, good conversations to be having with very valid points, but how they further push the white working class who do basically the worst out of life further away. And it was talking about how
towards the right.
Well, no,
What would you
like
say?
further away from anything. So further, like it means that it contributes to worse performance in school because you the conversations that will surround you are that you're white and you've got everything pretty easy and stuff, and you're going, well, I have no hope of going to university. None of my parents have had a job since the coal mines closed.
I come from Lee Park. That was the vibe.
There's
That was
no politician offering you anything because those conversations aren't happening around you. They're happening, and like I say, they're good conversations to be happening. How can we raise the aspirations of inner city black kids? How can we make things better for other demographics? But like that, there is a reason why they feel so left behind, and those are kids, but their parents will be the ones who vote Brexit because they don't see any other opportunity. There's no other way. So I guess some of the things that you'll be told, like we will bring manufacturing back to your town, and it's the same conversations that probably happened in the US around the election. We'll bring manufacturing back to your town. We'll have jobs. Like,
yeah, but they're fed the wrong lies. They're told that the immigration and stuff like that are the causes. But yeah, it's like the education costing more. They're told the wrong things. That's
no, I completely agree, and this is exactly the problem. Is that when you
outsourcing is what's I mean,
Go on, Joe.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think for me, the crux of my argument is that when you have too many conversations that permeate across all levels of society that are far too related to identity politics, e.g., you're white, everything's pretty good for you, you're male, everything's pretty good for you. When you're actually in that demographic where statistically you are actually doing the worst, you then become more susceptible to bullshit like immigrants are stealing your jobs.
Yep.
Whatever it is, because
very easy to fall down the far right rabbit hole because they're the only people saying to you that your grievances are legitimate.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. Is that somebody, some newspaper,
someone's taking your side.
Yeah, exactly. So someone might look at some blog writer who lives in fucking Islington, let's say, and they go, well, why? They might, their blog post that day is why. Nothing that the white working class says matters because there are still problems within the black community, and which they probably are, like they definitely are. But it's like saying, why do we have to have this? There's only one group that can have attention at any one given time, which is ironically the same thing that we're using against the Black Lives Matter movement. They're going, oh well, it's tough for white people as well, so therefore Black Lives Matter is completely illegitimate as a movement. They would look at these things and go,
"Oh, the whole counter narrative."
Because I'm from, the whole counter narrative is like, well,
crazy.
Because I'm a young white working class person from somewhere outside of the M25, or let's be perfectly honest, north of the M25. Let's just like anywhere. I mean, like because I drive for a living. And I do gigs. I've probably seen a lot more of this country than most of my mates. Most of my mates will admit they don't really leave Surrey unless they have to for, I don't know, like going to see a relative or something. But I, literally in the last 2 weeks, I've been to Cambridge, Oxford, I've been to Birmingham, I've been to Exeter. And in some of the gigs I do a lot of like northern towns, like you do Blackburn, you do Retford. And you go up there and if you were from a Londonite, you can't believe like what there's a Brexit party sign. I was going there in December of last year. There was a Brexit party sign every 5 feet, near Nottingham and Retford. And they go like, well, I can't believe people, this is a real thing. People actually really embrace it. Like, no, they do, because, they had an industry and it got completely kneecapped. And then all they had, they were like when they talk about the Northern Powerhouse, the North was what literally kept the electricity on in this country.
Yeah.
Now they've got
the hijacking of the Union Jack as well. That was, that's a right-wing thing. That's crazy.
I would say the Union Jack, not so much. The England flag.
The England flag. But
I don't feel. Let's put it this way. I don't feel like kind of icky when I see the Union Jack. When I see someone really flying the England flag hard outside of a sporting event, I just get that little sort of EDL warning thing sort of creeps up in the back of my neck, like. This is being flown at a rather.
You shouldn't take that too seriously, though.
If it's like World Cup time, I'm like,
it's World Cup time. It's like fine, fly it, whatever, 6
nations.
It's their intention.
And the thing is, like, it shouldn't be this way. Like, we should be.
No, I don't want it to be that way.
Exactly.
To have to kind of, I guess, like, patriotism for me is all about like being able to like supporting your country, I guess, but being able to be critical of it as well. And
Definitely.
that's what we should be able to do. But we should also be like every other country is fairly proud to fly their flag and do it all the time. But I'm with you. I see not a Union Jack. I see a St. George's flag hanging in like March of not a football year, and I'm like, it's a bit BMP, but I shouldn't feel like that. But I still do, and
especially when it's plastered everywhere.
If you make that assumption, it's usually hanging out of the back of an Elridge Vauxhall Astra or something that's also got the St George's flag strewn across the bonnet, and despite the fact the bonnet's white and the car's gold, it's just absolutely it's one of those things. The guys in front have got like braces and no shirt. It's all that kind of. It's always like. I don't want to make an assumption, but I'm probably on the fucking money with it, But it is sad. I don't want to get that feeling.
Hold up, guys. I think the stream is stopped. Can you check the stream quick? Is that okay?
I'm on the stream.
It's still going.
Oh, is it still going? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's still going. Yeah.
It's saying streaming here, but I'm trying to get it on my phone, but it doesn't. It seems to not work. Sorry, you carry on. I'll
Does the EDL still exist?
EDL? Oh yeah, of course it will.
I'm gonna look that up. I part of me thought it had sort of merged into Britain first. I don't know why I thought that. Oh, it's still no. Apparently, it's still going. Formed. He formed. Yeah. Do you know what the problem is? It's like I don't know. There's a bit that people who are in it who also who use like the whole Second World War, we fought off the Nazis kind of rhetoric. Like, have you ever looked at the symbolism of your own kind of like movements and not gone? It's the whole Mitchell and Webb thing. It's like, are we the baddies? We've got skulls on. Literally, our helmets have skulls on them.
Did you see the guys? It was, I think, after the Black Lives Matter stuff kicked off, and then they did like a big right-wing counter demonstration. I think by the Cenotaph, I think in London.
Saw that.
And there were like right-wing guys doing like
doing the Hitler.
Oh yeah.
Like you are so confused about everything.
Exactly, with like the George's flag or Union Jack or something.
They're
so
not
completely.
You're being very nice with them there, Joe. They're fucking morons. Like they just do not understand.
Well, they've been manipulated, haven't they?
All the source material. Of course they have. They've been given all the source material, and they've been given it. Like I was James O'Brien. I was listening to him. Oh, your standard liberal radio presenter, but fuck me, I'm glad there is at least one. But on LBC between 10 and 1, brilliant program. And he was saying that for part of his book, he had a woman who used to phone in and say, my husband has just fallen down this EDL rabbit hole. And but I managed to pull him out of it. And he said, how did you do that? He said, I basically said, it's me or the laptop. He said, once you remove that feed of hatred, what he said is, okay, right, I'm just reverting to a non-smartphone. This is a few years ago, and I'm going to put the laptop under the thing. I'm going to only share your computer for emails and shit. After a while, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, he was cured. He just didn't have those feelings anymore. And he goes, this was literally, I believed all this shit, despite the fact that everything I saw in my real life negated it.
Well, this ties in with the propaganda machine with the Cambridge Analytica, because obviously stuff like that was used in, what was it, Turkey, I think? No, not Turkey.
Everywhere, man.
Yeah, exactly.
They will quite happily ruin fucking nations if the money's good enough with Cambridge Analytica. If you're talking about
campaigns in Kenya, Nigeria, Ukraine, obviously the US.
South American country.
Yeah, fucking, they operated everywhere.
What I'm amazed at is, do you remember the day that they said that they had to raid the offices? And they said, can we have 1 day to prepare? And there was footage of them moving shit out of the offices in, like, files. It's like, why are you giving them that 1 day? That's like going, like, I just need 1 day to burn
bleach
all the
everything.
And wipe all the hard drives.
Like...
Yeah, delete, just going, like, delete, like that on every single file.
What happened to that guy? Something Nix. Alexander Nix, I think, was his name. He was the MD or CEO.
Oh yeah, Cambridge Analytica guy. Yeah, the main guy. I'm not sure actually.
Hang on, wait a minute.
Because he was in court, wasn't he? I believe at some point.
I tell you exactly what that is because there's an article from last month about him.
So
Cambridge Analytica chief receives 7-year directorship ban. He's handed a penalty for running potentially unethical behaviour linked to scandal. You know what I think the problem is? The problem here is that their actions have pretty much almost ruined democracies.
Yeah, they shifted.
Because we're in a modern age with old laws, there's no law that we can apply to them to essentially prosecute them on. But they have really done criminal action by lying online. But we're basically using a rule book that maybe the newest thing in it is from 20 years ago, when peddling bullshit on social media to influence elections isn't considered.
Yeah, and only the left will be able to combat that, because the right are content with it, like, to some degree. I think, they
to be
fair, people who say they don't mind being lied to.
Do you know that the first campaign to use not Cambridge Analytica, but essentially the exact way that they went about gathering data and manipulating data was the Obama campaign. That was the first campaign that used people's Facebook data and started targeting messaging.
I guess that was NSA with Edward Snowden, and that wasn't it.
It was probably one of the first, what you might call, social media elections, I would say. Especially in 2012, I think it was stronger.
Yeah, it was, but they still used it in that way, and now the left uses it just as much as the right. I think, like, it's interesting because I don't think I've got a problem with, like, what Cambridge Analytica do. I don't think I have a problem with. The problem is what they did morally was they essentially collaborated with Facebook to extract data that people hadn't given their permission to. And people had not signed away their permission to pass on this data to Cambridge Analytica. That's what annoyed me. Like, I don't really think I have an issue with Cambridge Analytica or companies like Cambridge Analytica, essentially marketing agencies for governments. Like, that's the way things are going.
Each person should have agency of their data, shouldn't they? And each agent, as in ourselves, we should have agency over our own data, which is there's loads of different. Because I work in data.
Bring me to my second point, which is, like, Oscar's point was super valid. So we do not have anything like the correct data laws. Like, GDPR was
definitely
a drop in the ocean. Yeah. Like, we need, and we don't have, a digital bill of rights. That doesn't exist. There are
massively need that.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be the next big, and I've thought this for a while, it's going to be the next big civil rights issue is how we are, I guess, treated online, and what rights we have online about our presence and our data and stuff like that. And the problem is that governments, pretty much all of them, are run by fucking dinosaurs. People who do not understand this stuff for love nor money. Did you see when Mark Zuckerberg was testifying in front of Congress?
I saw that.
And these people
I'm surprised.
Wait, sorry, what was that again?
To open a PDF.
Literally that. It's literally that. Like, these people do not have a fucking clue about technology and its implications.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? I did miss that.
Have an email. The best that all those senators probably had is an email address that they've only just come around to figuring the fuck out. But there was also this was also on James O'Brien. We were talking about the ineffectualness of government to deal with, like, things like the test and trace thing. They said, someone said, I work in the civil service and I am pushing so hard against people who came into this in the 70s and have not wanted anything to change. They've almost, like, pushed up against the idea of anything not coming from a typewriter, let alone, like, an electronic processor. The idea that anything has to be app-based or anything mobile phone-based. The whole premise of things like the civil service and the more archaic forms of government are preventing the people who vote them in from getting what they want, because the people do use social media, they do use smartphone technology, they do use, that general sort of thing. They've embraced it, and the governments have not. They still think, well, we can make the world work via our standard. It's a bit like some of the people that I've worked with, some musicians who won't own a mobile phone, they won't give you their home phone number, they will literally give you an email address. You've got to work around that, and they've got to meet you at a gig somewhere where if anything changes, they've got no way of getting in contact with you. And somehow it's always like anybody else's fault if they don't get there on time, because they won't use the sat nav either, or, oh, I'm calling you from, like, a pub phone because I can't find the venue. I'm like, this really is becoming your fault after a while. Like, this is not like, you know, you are kind of you're costing me. Yeah, and it's like we fucking like we had to hand back. I'm not joking. We had to hand back money for a fucking gig because sax player, who I love madly, won't have a smartphone, won't have a sat nav, and he won't give out his home phone number, and he basically was using a map. And we had to do a gig on Wapping, which is like north of the river, East London. And it was Pride Week, and he couldn't get through the traffic. And so the whole gig had to be my old playing solo to backing tracks with no saxophone in it. So and the woman asked for her money back because he didn't turn up. We go, where is he? Why don't you call him on his mobile? And we're going like, doesn't have a mobile. Of course he does. He's of course got a. No, he really doesn't have a. He does not have a mobile phone. He lives 5 minutes from us, and I have to go up to his house to talk to him. I can't even fucking phone him on his home phone because his wife won't let him give the number.
That's it.
It's like, and that's the civil service in a nutshell. They just won't move forward. So it's like, thanks for that, Al. You eventually arrived to see us pack down, and now we've lost like 400 quid because you literally refused to use a mobile phone. Found out later it's because he didn't want his wife finding out all the women he was having an affair with, so he basically kept it on a payphone only basis.
It's yeah, my
way to go around it.
My old man used to work for the civil service like fairly briefly, and he always tells this one story where like I think he like must have walked into the office on day one, and some like old dude probably smoking a cigar, probably drunk, and it was like 10 in the morning. He just pulled him aside. He was like, if you want to get ahead here, the best thing to do is not do any work. And civil, that was almost certainly true at the time.
The first day.
Yeah, first day. My dad did not last very long there, but I think that was actually quit.
Seen picking up a pencil, and he was quickly dismissed.
Yeah. Get out of here, you.
You look like you might actually do something. But yeah, it's cool because the problem is like with like going back to the technology thing is that like I think most politicians who actually make the laws don't have a sound understanding of even why this is problematic now, and I think more importantly for me why digital rights are going to be so much more problematic in 10-20 years. I mean we've already started to see how they can sway elections, how they can do all sorts of things that actually could have repercussions down the line in public life or civil life, whatever it is. And I think we're only starting to see it's like the tip of the iceberg is what we've got now. But the problem is we don't have politicians who are forward thinking enough to actually start doing something to protect everyone in about 10 years time. And even when you look at things like cybersecurity and stuff like that, like again probably what we're seeing now is very much like tip of the iceberg stuff, but we're kind of kidding ourselves if we don't think that this is the online
it's the way forward.
Like wars are going to be fought in future because they 100% are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, look at Elon Musk, his Neuralink. That's going to become a part of you, and that's going to be something that is going to be valuable to companies, to politicians, and stuff like that. Your privacy and your agency to your information, because arguably you are the product. You as I'm sure you've seen the Social Dilemma or whatever it is on Netflix. About it's more valuable your attention.
Seen that yet?
Oh, you haven't yet? Okay, yeah, you watch it. It's great. But moving on to a point that
I saw the Great Hack.
Oh yeah. Watch Social Dilemma. It's really good.
I haven't seen the Social. Is that more about what social media does in general, or?
Yes, unintentionally to some degree, like intentionally in another degree. I just want to go back to the AI discussion because I know me and Joe wanted to discuss on this a little bit. But
can I get a beer first?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, cool. All right, we'll have a quick break then. Cool.
Put that interval music on. I'm going to go pour another whiskey.
All right.
It's starting to get heated. I've got points to make. Hang on. Yeah, put the interval music on.
I start speaking up and they fuck off. Yeah. So, I was going to say in regards to the AI, my job works around data. I'm a software engineer, tester. I dabble with code, databases. AI automation, machine learning, stuff like that. So, yeah, it's definitely going to go that way, especially in 10 years when, well, yeah, things like it's going to become a part of your anatomy, data collection, what they do with that data, it's the ownership of it as well, which is a big problem. Why so you're super upset with me because I found out. Yeah, I'll put a little bit of that background music that that Oscar put to me earlier. Hey. Well, that's a quick one. I'll just turn that.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I was just thinking there when Joe comes back, I had a point to make about the whole being behind on sort of intel or media, and there he is. There's the man.
Yeah, I was just about to say in regards to like the government
John,
being behind in the industry.
There.
Yeah, I got some Japanese whiskey.
What did you go for?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, did you hear that? Some Japanese whiskey that went like 400 quid here. It was like cost like £80 over there. I remember like the import is exactly. They rank it up quite a bit.
This rye is like a Jim Beam rye. It cost me 38 quid or something like that, but it's got it's got a
rye,
lovely smooth taste.
Oh, so good. Have you had the bullet with rye?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous.
I might have to get on that. On my basic bitch, I got JD Honey and Coke. So.
I like.
When you get Dougal on, he'd just be like smashing JDs and Cokes like he's Lemmy in disguise.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were saying Joe about whole like being behind on the times. Like when I talk to my old man about like Putin, he goes like, "Oh, he's nothing to worry about because he wouldn't send tanks over." Like, are you thinking that he wants to take over other countries with tanks? Like, do you realize that he's basically got armies of people sitting in basically fucking hot desks, taking turns to pump out shit that turns people on? Because my dad doesn't do social media, and but basically nobody over my age in my family does social media at all. Nobody. So they don't understand the effect that it has. So they go like, well, I don't do it, so they.
Oh, am I?
No, he's kind of, I don't know, he's gone a bit like 1980s music video-y.
From him.
A little bit like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Well, what's that? Dark.
Have I turned into a lizard man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have I turned into a very
to be fair.
Like I've.
It's AI gone wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. That's actually like that screen grab looks fucking cool there.
Yeah.
But but that whole.
No, we've lost him.
Oh God, hang on. Am I on the Twitch stream?
His speech is back.
I have to refresh the Twitch stream as well.
I was just about to make a point in regards to like AI in the government, in regards to their like understanding of like other industries, like the industry I'm in, energy. I work for an energy company, gas and electric. They don't have a fully understanding of what we can do or the implications of it either. They're very much, I'd arguably say at least 6 or 7 years behind. They're asking things that have already been addressed. I can't really go too much into it because I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about stuff, but it's crazy how much that the government don't understand a lot of things which are going to affect a lot of people.
With AI, it's really interesting. Like a really good example is so my girlfriend used to work for an insurance company that I'm obviously not going to name in a call center. and she used to manage like a team, and she would often say to me and had said to like her team, like her role was kind of innovation, so it was, I guess, like kind of how to like make call centers work like more effectively, like transformation, like projects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She was always saying like, look, you kind of have to respond to change, and you've got to be really, really up with change, because at some point
100%.
in like the really, really like near future, there will be robots that will be able to do this job. Like, voice technology already exists at a level where you could be replaced in a heartbeat.
Deep
by
fakes.
A robot.
You've got facial recognition. You've got so many different tools nowadays.
I get adverts because I'm in the music biz, as it were. I get plugged adverts for plugins, which are
Joe's in the music biz as well, aren't you?
Of human voices. And you can literally program a song in with a human voice, a girl. You can choose what kind of intonation it has, or a boy, and any word you want it to sing, you can make it sing. So you can do an entire musical track without a single human element in it, including the voice.
Yeah,
that's how far down we are now.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you look at everything else, like there's probably no industry that will eventually be untouched. All right, there are a few industries that will be untouched by this, but like not many. And it's where like I start to, so when you look at like the economic impact is where I probably start to like flip what I believe in terms of, so eventually there will come
another argument for universal basic income.
Yeah, something like that.
I was about to say UBI.
I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, cool.
I really don't think we're there yet, and I don't think we'll be there for a while. But when there comes a point when robots do most of the manual stuff and some of the technical and service-led stuff and data-led stuff, and then there are essentially robots that are creating those robots, there will be very, very few jobs, but there will still be production happening. There'll still be loads of this stuff. There'll still be things being produced and being sold, but people won't be doing the things that actually lead to that happening. That's a point where I can eventually see myself being convinced that universal basic income, like the creation of that wealth, has to be shared around, and it can't just be earned by doing. And I'll be really interested to see the point at which we think, okay, there are too many people out of work because these jobs are being essentially outsourced to robots. At what point do we start thinking, okay, we need to essentially start giving people... It's Andrew Yang's argument. When do we start to give people a share?
That was Andrew Yang's whole advertising campaign. I mean, it showed you, like, it was very interestingly done. It shows you like what you think is happening, which is like people who are clearly Mexican, Hispanic, or what have you, working in the factory. And he goes, what's actually happening? And then those people disappear and the factory's opened out. It said, it's outsourcing, and look at where it's been outsourced to. It's all being done by a robot.
Yeah.
So these people didn't take your jobs. Robots took your jobs.
Well, yeah.
Like, you can't, pick it on a union line against robots because they have no, they've got no, they're not necessarily pushing for overtime. So his argument for the UBI, I think, is really salient, and it's landing with a lot of people on. I think where Andrew Yang's really good is it's landing on people on the right wing, and it's also landing on people on the left wing, and it's landing on people in the central wing, because he doesn't.
Which it should.
It should, yeah, because that's what most good ideas should do. That's what I think that,
Like, I could... There was... Not everything he said I agreed with. In fact, I'd still probably disagree with most of it. But he was a guy that I can listen to talk for a long time and come away thinking, yep, that actually makes sense. Even if it's not right now, that makes sense. Like, I would really encourage you both to... I think it's on YouTube, the Ben Shapiro and Andrew Yang interview they do for like an hour. It's a really...
I did think I watched the first 5 minutes and then I got distracted and I ended up watching something else. So I will try and force myself to watch it. But I did obviously listen to him, Rogan. I listened to his podcast as well. He spoke to, he's a new guy.
Oh, he's robotic.
And annoyingly, whenever I tell people about it, I can never remember how to pronounce his name, because he's got a really, really long name. He's of Indian descent, and he's called Anand I'm gonna get slaughtered for getting this wrong.
Just Google it, mate.
Paradidas. I am Googling. I'm trying to read the fucking thing. I'm trying to read
are you? Okay.
and yeah, literally, that is how difficult it really doesn't flow off the tongue at all. But he's a kind of cool-looking Indian guy, but he's like the son of somebody who's quite wealthy and well-to-do, and he pushes for the whole idea of like philanthropy from billionaires is not enough. You need to move to something that's far more egalitarian. He said every time you see, like a Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos saying how much of their money they're donating to charity, said, look at what they've introduced. Keep an eye on what they've introduced in their company policy that week, because it usually is something like horrific, like suddenly everybody loses their, like time off, or suddenly everybody loses their holiday entitlement. And he says that, that philanthropy shouldn't be philanthropy is like the failure of government and society to provide, because it shouldn't be required in the first place.
I find it really,
to that extent.
This is where I think we're going to probably differ significantly. Is that like I still think, I guess.
How dare you, sir?
Volunteerism and charity, I still think have a really strong and fundamental place within our society. Like,
of course.
Taxes are fine when they're done right. Like as long as my tax isn't too much and it's being spent on things that I think are good.
Do you think that people should be able to choose what their tax is spent on?
Where the tax is allocated, that's I think what most people. Right wing is very, very good. Like the far right wing that kind of wants less tax is very good at like going, look at the bullshit they've spent your tax money on. Whereas you could just keep that. Ironically, you can't. You keep so little and we'd end up keeping all of it. But if we had a low tax government where we would end up being the victors and you would end up no better than you are now, you could keep X, Y, and Z. And your point about, the waste on the military. I mean, the British waste on the military is just not even close to what the American one is. I mean, it said if you literally cut, what is it? It said if you cut the American military budget by 10%, you could have Medicare for all. Everybody in the United States
spends more on their military than every other country in the world.
Yeah, combined, isn't it? Yeah.
Combined, yes, exactly. And how's Iraq working out? Did that work out quite well? I mean,
it's not about that, as we know, though, isn't it?
I heard something about there being some sort of extremist uprising, but I think that might be hearsay.
This is the thing, is like, weirdly, as someone who would describe themselves as pretty economically conservative, like conservative governments in the UK only spend like marginally less than Labour governments typically, but they always talk about less spend, fewer taxes, lower taxes, and a smaller state. But actually, you can look it up pretty quickly. They only spend a little bit less. They tend to spend a tiny bit less, but barely anything.
Marginal.
A drop in the water. Like, and even in this, so if you look in the States, Republicans would typically also talk about a smaller state and lowering taxes, but they are happy to spend as much as they fucking want on the military. Also, Democrats will do the same. And what I thought was interesting about the original iteration of the Tea Party was they were a guy like Ron Paul was very much, I want to cut our military spending by fucking loads. Like, we do not need...
Ron Paul had some really good ideas. Like someone said that the problem is with Ron Paul is that economically said this, he pointed out where there were wastes and he was really on the money with it. But then unfortunately, he couldn't help but like say, and as for those black people, I was like, oh,
no,
come on. Like you were so close to having a good point. And as for those blacks, it's like, oh no, Jesus! Even your son can't redeem you on this one.
I'm gonna go for a while, so you guys carry on.
Like yeah, but it really was a shame because like I remember I think it was the 2012 election. He ended up being like in the last four, didn't he? Like there was yeah, I think it was like it was Mitt Romney, it was Rick Santorum, it was. That unbelievable, like literally life begins at erection. Rick Santorum, like literally, if I get an erection, okay, this
Mitt Romney now, like comes across as like I was always quite unimpressed with Mitt Romney, I guess, during like that election stuff. And now whenever I hear Mitt Romney talk, I'm like, yeah, go on, man. He's so critical of Trump.
So I'm exactly the same. I'm exactly the same. Like, could I swap Donald Trump for Mitt Romney? Yeah, I'd absolutely do that tomorrow. Like a guy that I campaigned vigorously against in 2012. I was like, please don't. Oh, well, I wouldn't put it that far, but I will push, because we were talking about like on the first episode we did. You weren't on that one, were you? Is this you've done? I think you've done the one that I haven't done, like the episode that I haven't done.
Yeah.
Whilst Simon isn't on. We were talking about sort of, where we get our information, or sort of interesting podcasts to follow. I've been following a podcast called The Dollop, which is, it's meant to make you laugh, it's meant to be comedic, but it is a very focused, fact-based expose of certain things. So whether they be politicians, whether they be movements, whether they be historical events. And The Dollop did one on George H.W. Bush. They're going to do one on probably George W. Bush quite soon.
Yeah.
The shit that he did. It's like, why? People who've done horrific shit in the past, and because of the way that Trump is, they're being Trump's doing the same shit you're doing in the open, and saying that if you
Honestly, mate, you're stalling a little bit.
Punches a child in the face whilst on camera. Stalling a little bit. Am I coming through all right? I've got a little
bit
bar
janky.
thing telling me that my Okay, is that a little bit better? It says my bar connection.
Yeah, you're fine now. You're fine now. Do you want
to? It's one of those things where, like, when Trump, he literally could punch an infant to death on camera, on like 3 camera feeds, and would say it's fake news.
What do you say? Shoot someone on Wall Street?
We're talking about how people, like, we look at somebody like Trump and we rehabilitate people who we previously would have, have crossed, we wouldn't have pissed on, put out if they're on fire. Bush, Mitt Romney, and now we're going, I'd vote for Mitt Romney in a heartbeat if it means I could get rid of Trump. But these people are still not good. What they did is they did the shit that Trump does out in the open. They did it behind closed doors, under cover of darkness. They sort of did it, subversively through a few legal loopholes here and there. Trump just goes, I've done it, and anybody who says I actually did it is fake news, and it's all lies, despite the fact I'm literally doing it on fucking camera right now, and the eyes and your ears are deceiving you.
There are some key points, I guess, where I would disagree. Like, I do not think Donald Trump is a competent manager. Like, I think he's good at things. Like, he's good at thinking, and he is probably a fairly decent businessman. I think he is good at some things, but I don't think he's a good manager of a country, if you want to see it like that. Like, if you put Mitt Romney in the situation that Donald Trump has found himself in, where he's having to deal with a pandemic that is, ravaging the US, I think Mitt Romney would have put together a much more competent and comprehensive plan to deal with it. I think like Mitt Romney or Paul Ryan, like, just to completely go a little bit off topic, like, what happened to the American center right? So for us, that would probably just be the right. But like, what happened to the American center right? Like, what happened to your Paul Ryans, your Mitt Romneys, your John Kashish's, the likes of that? Like, it's
yes,
like they disappeared.
John Kashish could be in power right now, basically pleasing nobody but getting a job done, if that makes sense. Like, when he speaks, he seems like quite reasonably minded, quite rationally minded.
I think he said he's voting.
Is he voting what? Sorry?
I think he recently said he's going to vote, like, publicly came out and said he's going to vote for Biden.
There's a lot of that never Trumpism, like the Lincoln Project that have been releasing all those admittedly pretty good adverts, but against Trump, but they have all come from the same sources of the people who were in the George H.W. Bush admin and the Reagan admin and the George W. Bush admin. And if you find out what they did, it's pretty horrific shit. I mean, I was mentioning, I don't know if Simon was off when I was mentioning the recommendation of the Dollop podcast.
No,
really, really good
podcast. What's that? The Dollop cast?
Because we were talking about, we were talking on that first episode about like, where do we get our information? Where do we get our podcast? What would we recommend?
Oh yeah,
I would certainly recommend the Dollop podcast. You have to go back a little bit.
Dollop and Dave, Anthony, and Gareth Reynolds.
One, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, they got Patton Oswalt as well. He's one of my favorite comedians ever. He's fucking brilliant. And they get him on for the Ronald Reagan episode.
Oh yeah,
opens your eyes, because to a lot of people, Ronald Reagan was this affable, well, I'm sort of an affable old fella, that sort of amenable thing. But the shit he put through was horrific, absolutely horrific. And the stuff that they laughed about, like basically, within their enclosed, ensembles, was awful. I mean, they literally did nothing about AIDS. They laughed at jokes like people basically dying of AIDS. They said that Ronald Reagan used to brag about the fact that his main skill was repeating anything that he'd recently heard out loud as fact. So he became this vessel for, by the way, there's loads of people abusing public funds. So you should probably get rid of all social welfare products, because there's a woman in Queens who has like 5 Cadillacs, and it's like she also happens to be black. She should make sure that it never gets in the hands of black people. Well, I happen to be told that there's a black lady who has got 5 Cadillacs and she's got 17 social security accounts, and she shouldn't have any of that. So that's why you should vote for me. And he thought this was a place of pride, and that if he was ever confronted on anything, he was confronted on something once in a White House briefing. And in order to confront the fact that he had no answer for it, they turned all the lights off. And he snuck out, and they turned the lights back on and said, I don't have to answer you while the lights are off. This was a real thing that happened. He said that, like, when the lights are off, I don't have to answer to the It's so worth. I know, it's fucking crazy. But the thing is, because that happened in the era when there was, like, one rolling news channel, and everything else was, like, you tuned in at 6, or you tuned in at 10 or 9 or wherever, and you got your news in like a little half-hour soundbite. That's probably why people didn't realize the horrific shit that they were doing, is because there's only X amount of stuff you can put out per day. And because of that, I would strongly recommend Dollop podcast. It's worth watching on video, because the reactions of Patton Oswalt and Dave Anthony are just so worth watching. On Ronald Reagan, it was very recently done. It was well worth watching. And also they did one on George H.W. Bush just after he died. And it's where you realize, like, people try and rehabilitate these people because they're not rude in the way that Trump is. Like, Trump is just like, I don't like this person, so I'm going to call them a name, and I'm going to call them stupid little man.
Basically.
Yeah, it's basically like, it's all the same shit, but it was done in more polite terms, and it wasn't done brazenly every day. Like, it just, at the moment, what we've suffered from for the last 4 years is just, every day it's an assault on what we know to be tangibly true and factual. And you have somebody from the government office, of the most powerful office in the world, saying, you know what, actually, red is blue, and up is down, and black is white, and left is right, and we can just believe that, and you're fake to say otherwise. And like, what the fuck is happening? And then the little shitty alt-right trolls go, yeah, it's really confused you, hasn't it, lying? It's like, yeah, because you are lying.
Yes, like, really
that's the thing. They see, like, oh, you're so confused because we lied. Like, yeah, that's the point. The point is that you've deliberately been disingenuous. You shouldn't be like kind of ecstatic that we've reacted badly to lies, because that's what any decent human being should do. You shouldn't be like, haha, we lied to you, and yeah, that's really pissed you off, hasn't it? It's that whole precept of, I think we discussed it in possibly the first podcast we did, which is people will happily burn their own homes to the ground vote for someone as long as that one person pisses off the other side.
Mm.
And that's where it's gone wrong.
It's
And
very.
that's the whole, you know.
I wouldn't have phrased it
dry,
that way,
it's
but
very
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Simon. I apologize for like I feel like I keep speaking over you.
No, you're good, mate. You're good.
You just seem really quiet in like I don't know if it's like my speakers, but you just seem very quiet. So
I'm quite a quiet person in general.
You got a fantastic sound coming out of a basic microphone.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's sorry. I kind of lost what I was going to say now, but yeah, don't worry about it. Like I'm quite. If I do want to speak up and that, I usually like say so. If not, then like
just
it's
heard a really
fine.
big clicking noise.
Well, I've got the power to mute both of you, and I haven't used it yet, so like don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good. I'm having fun. I hope you two are.
The general thing I'm getting at is that there's some weird thing, and it is predominantly, it is pretty much uniquely on the right side, on the right wing. It's like, we are going to lie to you, and we're going to be overjoyed that you react poorly to our lies.
I don't want to say it's
gone horrifically long.
Yeah.
But the alt-right, I would say, the alt-right is like enjoying the fact, haha, we said that 2 and 2 actually equals Trump and not 4.
I feel like it's all about the winning. Like they, I see a lot of the winning argument, but it's not
competition that nobody wants to get involved in. It's like, oh, I won the shit-eating competition. It's like, yeah, but you were the only person who got involved.
Yeah, I feel like the right is treating it, as Joe said earlier, as a game, but the left are kind of seeing it as a more of a an integral kind of
it's like a
progression. Yeah, like a virtuous thing. Yeah, rather than we need to win. You know, it's more of a less aggressive.
That's the whole. I've said this multiple times. But the whole thing of like when you know, the whole whatever is 60 Minutes or whatever that program is. They said to Trump, what do you want your legacy to be in your administration? And he just went, winning. I won. It's like, it's not about doing anything for anybody. It's just about getting
power, I guess, in some degrees.
Power, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm halfway through. I downloaded a lot of the Dollop recently because I started listening to it more, and I go, fuck me, they've really exposed some shit. And then they were doing one about Donald Trump, and the fact of the matter is, his dad encouraged him that if you start losing an argument, throw out the same phrase again and again until your opposition gets tired and eventually lets you win because they're tired of you saying the same thing over and over again. Like, that says so much about the way he's decided to run a country.
What I find,
the way he's decided to run a business and a government.
Do we think that like Trump is a blip? Or do we think this is potentially the face of politics to come? Like, do you guys think? And I'm asking
he's not
you
a blip.
Because,
look at the people who he knows. Look at the people he knows who's hang out with. Like, he's not this humble, normal person. You know, that everyone likes to believe he is. You know, he's part of the bourgeois. You know, he's yeah.
How he convinced himself to be a man of the people, I don't know. But I would say that in certain ways, I'd say that he's somewhat good, but the left are too stupid to realise it. Because he cut through all the political chaff talking.
Mm-hmm.
He just went straight for the jugular, and the left still won't embrace that in a way
the left
really served them well.
Only really had Bernie, and then once he was out,
they're so determined not to upset any one group. They go like, we will just use as much kind of careful, tightrope walking, you know, sort of motivational word salad. That we won't actually say anything at all. And where Trump's going like, I don't like this person, you suck, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do something that's completely undoable, and I'm going to make it all happen, and you guys suck, and this person's a liar, and I can do all the... He just came out, and he tore up the rule book of how you go about...
Well, the irony of the whole fake news.
Elected.
The irony of... That's
the
just...
Point, but yeah, exactly. But the point is that think that the point should be argued about, like, the whole standing there with your thumb and we are the, the whole Pete Buttigieg shit of, like, we are the future that you vote to preserve and we are the democracy. It's like, that means fucking nothing. Go out there and say, this sucks, I'm going to get you jobs, China's stealing everything,
China.
This guy's an asshole. It's like, that resonates with people because it's not wrapped up in
it's
political,
about, like,
super careful.
It's about, like, so I said this on the show last time, but obviously when I was on last time, but obviously I'll skew word on it. Like, I work in marketing, and like every time like I see a politician talk, I'm just like, this is marketing. This is just political marketing that is coming at you. And like something that you're taught pretty early on is have your key messages and repeat your key messages until basically you got those messages across really clearly. Everyone knows exactly what you can offer them and what adds value to what you do as an individual, because that's what people care about, right? People care about themselves. People are inherently selfish. They can be community-based.
I don't know.
And they can care for other people, and there are lots of good things that people do, but ultimately people respond to what they are offered and what they see as the offer that you are giving them. And what Trump does is, I mean, he lies all the time, but he's very clear about what he does. Trump's offer, Trump's pitch is really clear. It's like economy, jobs, manufacturing. Like it's a really, really simple proposition.
The left have been horrendous. The left have been horrendous on that for years because
Really
they're so
slogans and
having to be so focused on whole identity politics and appeasing the woke crowd. And
like, why?
go like, no. Don't you dare talk about getting white people jobs. What about my concern as a transsexual person who identifies as a helicopter? Like, oh, fuck's sake. So now we've got to talk about...
please don't like use that, because that's just such a cringe when people start saying stuff like that. You know, the whole...
Well, I know that, but unfortunately we haven't...
Yeah, it's
the
just
left
a bit cringy,
hasn't
mate.
helped themselves by kind of like trying to appease that. You know what I'm trying to say. You know that I like...
Yeah, definitely,
like,
yeah.
a whole I'm totally... Yeah, exactly,
but that's
yeah.
that's
but
like a Piers Morgan take.
They serve themselves their own stereotype on a plate because... We're trying to they go like, no, don't try and appease the former coal miner trying to like make sure that they have a job and they can pay their mortgage. What about this weird minority thing set? You have to concentrate on that and that only, and if you don't, you're racist and you're xenophobic and and then they're stuck with this whole, oh, for fuck's sake, we can't get anything done. Then Trump goes out and goes, I'm going to get you jobs. I'm going to bring back manufacturing. And then those people who were previously served by left wing, the Democratic Party in America or the Labour Party in the UK, go, I'm going to vote for this guy because this guy's the only person talking about the stuff that matters to me. I want a job. I want to be able to pay my bills. I want to do more than pay my bills. I want to have a decent quality of life. I want to, make sure my kids get an education. I want to have a nice house. I want to have a nice car.
Yeah, it doesn't help
talking about that. Why are they talking?
Yeah, it doesn't help that when say the Labour. Say what Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, the people that have represented the left in the past have given them that cause for concern and that jump to some degree. It hasn't been a integral cog in the left that actually represents them accurately, I don't believe.
It's a really, really good point, actually. Like, I mean, Blair was the most conservative prime minister and the most conservative, non-conservative prime minister probably ever. But like, going back to what I was saying about messaging, like Blair was very clear on his messaging, and it meant that he won the election. Like even now, people remember Blair, education.
Yeah.
They remember Blair talking about fucking I don't know,
EMA and all that,
whatever else. Like he was very clear on his message. So another thing, like Blair was very clear that Blair was the guy for the middle classes. It's what like Republicans have run on for decades and decades, saying like we are the party of the middle class, and Blair did exactly the same thing and won the election. And in doing so, probably actually was a pretty not like a good champion of the working class, but I think he probably did some things for the working class during his time that were probably quite effective.
Yeah. Do you
but
think
he was very clear on his messaging?
Yeah, I would agree.
Look at Ed Miliband when he was running his.
I think that the thing that
I think that Ed Miliband was very clear. He had that weird Moses-style stone tablet that had like 10 very vague points on it. Like
that was weird.
Not clear on his messaging. Corbyn, clearer actually.
Definitely. I'd say
probably clearer. And Corbyn, I mean, Corbyn is a whole different thing, I think, because there were so many people working against Corbyn that even if his messaging was clear, his party organisation was literally working against him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like the left has not been strong on that. Clinton was not strong on that. I don't particularly think Biden's being strong on that. I think Biden's just hoping that everyone hates Trump enough that he's going to win.
What's your view on Starmer? Do you think he's going to be more towards a Gordon Brown, Blair type Labour leader, or do you think he's going to try and swing the left policies more towards, well, his campaign, I guess?
Cop-out answer.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be weirdly, I don't think he'll be that far off what Ed Miliband Labour was like.
Okay. I see a little bit.
I think it'll be slightly more left-wing than Blair and probably considerably more right-wing than Corbyn, but probably more left-wing than New Labour. I think he'll sit somewhere just to the left of New Labour. I think he'll be like a classic.
Would you vote for that?
Social Democrat. It's such a weird one. Possibly. I could be convinced. Like I don't think I would vote Conservative if there was an election tomorrow, if it was Boris Johnson and if it was this brand of conservatism that I do not consider to be particularly conservative in almost any way. I don't.
Definitely.
It's too nationalist.
Can I jump in?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the whole where does Keir Starmer stand thing is interesting, because I think that what he can't do is go look at the inflated numbers that have happened in just 4 years of the last guy. Do I really want to stand to lose them and take me back to 2015? No, of course I don't want that to be the case. So I've got to straddle this middle ground of. He did do that speech where he said this is new leadership. I think that was what he was trying to say, is this is not quite New Labour, but almost, because that's trying to get that like middle class back. And what you said, Joe, about the whole Tony Blair appeal to. I'm sorry if I keep going with my hair, but it's just yeah. So I'm not trying to make you jealous or anything. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that in that way. It's just it's just an affectation because I've started putting like coconut oil in it, and now it's quite floppy.
I do it with my beard all the time. I'm just stroking my beard.
Oh yeah, you got to cut the coconut. Yeah, it's good for the beard. The whole like what Tony Blair did is he went. Labour is not strictly the party of the working man with the whippet in the Yorkshire working man's club. Like literally the flat cap. He said it can be. He had the whole the Mondeo man. And as a man who's owned 2 Mondeos, I can say that I understand where he's come from on that. Yeah. But it's the whole like you don't have to literally be just like a coal miner or like a shit shoveler to vote for Labour. Excuse me. You can be an aspiring person in the middle class, maybe in like a white collar job, and you can still vote for Labour and we'll do stuff for you. And I think that ran quite successfully for many, many years. And then I think that there's 2 strikes against Labour, which is 1, the Iraq War, and 2, the financial crisis. Ironically, after Gordon Brown took charge. And there's a little bit of me, tiny bit of me, that think that Blair looked at forecasts that maybe us plebs didn't have access to and went, there is going to be a financial shit show in a year's time. I am fucking out of here. Like I am wiping my hands clean of it. But what did Margaret Thatcher say? He said, when they asked her, said, what do you think your biggest legacy to British politics will be? Said, Tony Blair and New Labour. So it's basically dressing up the same thing, but in a slightly more red kind of more approachable manner. But I think that. Oh, sorry, carry on, Joe.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted, but yeah, I think it's what Labour needs a bit more of is appealing to a greater audience. It's what they haven't done very well for 10 years now, is basically getting, as much as I hate the phrase because it sounds so Brexity, but like the average man on the street, like the average guy, like the average person, really getting them on board and thinking,
with
Labour, I have a better future, whether you are in the industrial kind of left behind north, or you are a middle class person living in Surrey or Kent or whatever it is. I don't think Labour has been a broad church for a long time. And until Labour, like especially members and I guess more grassroots Labour, they're really like set on helping the working class and minority groups and all that stuff. And that's really that's a really good thing to aim to do. But they get too focused just on that they're not winning the votes of people who actually vote.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't see themselves as lower class.
Yeah, they don't. They're not.
Yes, nobody wants to really admit that they're in that lower tier, like, because it's like saying, there's right. So name drop moment, although it may not be a moment of pride. So I went to school with the sons of Jim Davidson, and I got invited back to his house many times. As a person,
oh yeah,
couldn't be a nicer guy. Honestly, couldn't it be like literally the best host? Wanted to know if you're having a good time. Wanted to know that his kids were happy. As a like political entity, can't stand him. His kids are cool. I'm like still friends with his, I'm still like chat to his, like his kids now, Charlie and Freddie, and his sister. Like they're all cool. But he was in a thing where he goes, I never saw the Labour Party as any party I want to be part of, because it sounded like they wanted to keep you at the bottom. And I think that's where the messaging has not been clear, where it's not been like, you can't aspire. I think the whole debating commie sort of, you just want everybody
that's in contrast to the goal, though, right?
Like a unit and everyone be paid the same thing. Well, yeah, in a way, I think what the people who sort of read the Telegraph and the Mail are very easily convinced.
Propaganda again,
let's be honest, most of them are wives of people who actually earn the money. Yeah, I mean, it's like if you look at what the Telegraph runs, and the Telegraph is almost like has not really moved past political sort of mindset of the 50s, like the fact that there's always some sort of red scare, and that they use the word fifth columnist umpteen times without really knowing what it means. And it's it's like oh darling, I heard that Jeremy Corbyn's going to nationalize Marks and Spencer's. It's like, oh, that's terribly bad. It's like, I've never done a day's work in my life and I've lived off your money, but the idea of somebody else living off the tax money on your money is absolutely abhorrent. I'm going to vote for that lovely Boris Johnson. And that's where that strand of thing is. And then if you move to the other echelon of the press, which is like the Sun, the Express, things like that, the Star, it's like, he's going to take away everything that makes you white. And they were very good at doing that, because all you've got to do is point to one person of color in their cabinet and go, that person once said that they suffered oppression, so he's talking about you like you're a racist, and you're not, so therefore why should you listen to them? And my dad suffers from the same thing. It's like the second anyone talks about sort of equality, he thinks that someone's having a go at him being racist even though he's not. So like he's got there's this perceived victimhood of that. If some person of a minority talks about, I've had problems being accepted as a minority.
I've also got problems.
How dare you accuse me of racism? It's like, we're not accusing you specifically, but not very good as a left wing of saying there are problems in institutions. Let's deal with that. I'm not pointing the finger at any one average Joe on the street.
Yeah, it's kind of institutions. A little bit like the whole BLM and like All Lives Matter. It's like, we're not saying that all lives don't matter. It's the message that gets mixed up. We're saying that
there's a problem with black people being arrested for the. I mean, I've got black friends in America who say I'm literally can't stomach the idea of getting him into my car, because I know if there's one tail light out, if there's one problem, I am going to be stopped and I'm going to spend the rest of my night dealing with a police investigation. Whereas if I was white, I wouldn't have that shit going on. But that's the consequence of living in America, being black. You know, was it said?
I wouldn't say it's only
arrested
America,
for driving
but
under the
I know
influence of being black.
Yeah,
it isn't only America, but it's a massive problem over there. I do remember that, like, when I was in LA, I was in the same place, you know, 2 times in 2 different days, and the way that they treated, there was, you know, the way they treated, like, there was a chap who had obviously, like, got a tail light out or something, like, or his blinker wasn't working, and I was standing opposite, you know, like the big, was it Mann's Chinese Theatre?
Oh
You
yeah,
know, the big
Mann's
thing where they
Chinese
have
Theatre.
movie premieres and they, you know, that sort of thing. And I was out there one day, cup of coffee or whatever it was. They pulled him aside. Like, hey, Ro, why you pulled you aside and all that sort of thing. And he was in a sort of, you know, generic Japanese American car, whatever it happened to be. Very next day I was there, there was a black chap, and all the guns were out, all the lights were on, and it was like, it looks like it's the same problem. It's like, you got to light out, you got to light out. Like, fuck, you get down on the ground, get down on the ground, get down on the ground. It's like you've got a totally different approach. A guy who's got the same problem as the guy the day before, but the guy the day before is a white dude. This guy is a black man, and you're literally calling in the fucking cavalry because the guy's black. The guy the day before is a white guy, and you're just politely saying to him, you might want to get that tail light sorted. This guy's like going like, don't go for your weapon, don't go for your weapon. And like, I'm literally watching it going like, I'm watching like something that I never thought I'd see in real life. I thought I'd only ever see this in like, you know, American crime or like, you know, Law and Order, or,
and they're not saying that, you know, it's this happened.
I'm watching it happen in front of me.
There are for me there are a couple of things here. Like your points, Oscar, are completely valid, and I get it. Like, I think the Black Lives Matter movement, not the organization, but the movement stands for exactly the right things and basically talks about the issues that we really need to address. But linking this conversation and the conversation that we were having sort of 10, 15 minutes ago, I think highlights the exact problems that come around like these conversations. Like, so just like as an example, dealing with the issue of how police treat Black people in America is something that really needs to be addressed. But these conversations within days moved from the police unlawfully and immorally and everything kneeling on a Black guy's neck until he suffocated to death, moved from that to we should stop airing Little Britain because it has some jokes that haven't aged very well. And this is where the left and progressive movements completely destroy themselves.
Yeah, that was fucking stupid.
Yeah, and then we start talking about...
That's the two extremes, though, isn't it? Like...
That was unbelievably stupid. It affects nothing. Ben's right. It affects nothing. It's not going to change the way that policing's done.
It's the whole going back in time and, like, you know... It's hard to explain because obviously, you know, the whole Fawlty Towers like lie that said that they were gonna get rid of this episode. Apparently that never even happened. You know, the whole march.
Whitewashing history.
It's like you take. This is where like the left really annoys me sometimes. They have a really good idea. Something happens like the George Floyd murder, and a really good idea sparks from it. Like, let's reform policing. Let's make sure that this doesn't happen again. Let's make sure that we take some really positive steps to change society, make it more egalitarian, make it freer for people. And then within days, we're talking about how, you know, jokes that haven't aged very well are part of the problem. How, you know, like you are...
I'm going to rename Rice.
Yeah, you are guilty if you don't accept, I guess, like the idea of critical race theory that, you know, that start talking about white fragility and stuff like this. And it's like these things do not address the problem. You have within hours spiraled away.
It's not making any difference.
You're trying to happen. And it's so frustrating because even now I see a lot of, you know, like black political liberal left-leaning commentators going, what the fuck has happened to this movement? We're not talking about policing. And the injustices that happen with policing in America. The conversations are now around culture and whether the recent one I saw was I think her name's Gal Gadot, or
Gal Gadot. Yeah, Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot.
Yeah, Gal Gadot.
She's not Macedonian enough to play
Cleopatra.
To be Cleopatra, despite the fact that she's pretty much, I mean, you know, in her genetic
she's from Israel, isn't she?
And her appearance, she's pretty much on the money to play Cleopatra because Cleopatra was a of Mediterranean descent, as is Gal Gadot.
Read like an article, Black Lives Matter is referenced somewhere in that article, and it's like, this has fucking nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. This has become so diffuse, and it's gone so far away from the original point of what that movement was, which was trying to sort injustices within the American policing system, of which there are fucking loads, and the George Floyd killing just being a very visual representation of that people can literally see because it was being recorded on a phone. And I'm just like, of course people feel like this movement doesn't represent them because it doesn't, because you've taken it, you've made it so diffuse, you've tried to you tried to get it to permeate every
the message gets lost, doesn't it?
Society, and it's like, no, focus on what this is trying to do, and maybe you can solve that. But as soon as you start telling movie stars which role they can and cannot play based on their ethnicity, which first of all I think is pretty racist, but like, it's crazy. Yeah,
they're actors. They're not meant to be purely themselves. Like that's the whole premise of being an actor, is that you actually are meant to kind of inhabit somebody else's environments and all that. And
yeah, I mean, obviously the whole Scarlett Johansson Ghost in the Shell Japanese part, like the message got lost.
People in America just get arrested for. We'll rename Uncle Ben's.
Yeah, that's
the whole thing. Is like, no, that's not solved anything. Like, I guarantee you, like, yeah, you renamed Uncle Ben's. Like, how many, like, the lynchings, right? Like, do you know how many, like, since the whole Black Lives Matter thing has started?
What's
like,
his
the
name?
amount of
Aubrey.
like, young black men who have been lynched.
Yeah, loads. Hung in the woods and loads of stuff.
Couple of months. Yeah, apparent suicides, my ass. These people have been lynched. Absolutely, have 100% been fucking lynched. Like, it's like they no record of, you know, kind of like suicidal behavior, or no record of kind of like, you know, wish to self-harm or sort of self-doubt. And there's now, since that, there are young black men hanging from trees. Apparently, they are being immediately dismissed as suicide, and they're not allowing, mostly in southern states, and they're not allowing investigation into the deaths.
And what annoys me is, like, that's horrendous, but what's making the headlines? It's not that. It's Hollywood
Uncle
saying
fucking Ben's
diversity quote every single aspect of the Oscars, and it's just like, you've ruined this. You've literally ruined this for yourself. It's like Hollywood is already.
It's like you're trying to ruin it. It's like you're trying to do exactly the wrong thing at every possible turn, and that's why it's like, when I
Arbery,
tell people,
Ahmed
when
Arbery.
people figure out about me, I'm not like, I thought you were a woke leftist. It's like, no, I'm a leftist, but I need wokeism to actually work. I need it to actually have a result, as opposed to focusing on all the. You know why? Because focusing on police reform is hard work. Focusing on law reform is hard work. They don't want to do the hard work. So what's easy? Well, let's get a focus group together, 6 people. Change the name of Rice so it doesn't have a connotation with a black man. Okay, so change the casting of this thing. Let's just remake everything with the cast of Black Panther. And if anyone gives Black Panther a less than 100% review on Rotten Tomatoes, we have to egg their house. It's like, just how is this stopping? Like, you know, like a young black guy in Mississippi is like, well, that's great, but I still got pulled over the other day because I had a tail light out, which was most for when the police officer smashed it with his baton. So this isn't helping me in any way, shape, or form. So please stop saying you stand for me. because you actually really fucking don't. It doesn't make an iota of difference to my existence. We need structural reform. We need someone to go, yeah, it is going to be painful and it is going to be hard work and I'm going to get a lot of pushback from it. And that's why Democrats over here and what you might call Lib Demi kind of like right Labour centrists, over here, just reek of laziness because they know they're going to get pushback on it. And that's why I admire Corbyn more, many reasons than others, because he went, what I'm suggesting is not very popular.
That's true.
It involves having to push back against the status quo. It involves having to make massive changes. I'm still going to push for it because I believe those changes are valid.
Yeah.
And I believe that they will make it better. If you just want a career in politics where you don't get anything done, but you get the salary and you get kind of like to stand out there and put out the platitude word salad, just join the fucking Lib Dems because that's all they do. They just live in this sort of, well, we can be the future of the determination of the fourth righteousness of the super. It's like, you're doing nothing. You're not achieving anything. You're just fucking throwing out, like some sort of bot-written political speech and thinking that that's politics. It does fuck all. And I'm getting really angry now. And I think I might have to call it a day and go to bed because we've been going.
I think that's. I think
or so hours.
As soon as you said bot-written political speech, I thought of Change UK quite quickly. But,
yeah.
we'll probably leave that there.
Cool.
It's a pleasure, guys. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, both of you, again for coming in. If you're obviously, I know Joe, your friend.
I enjoyed my ride a little bit too much.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Joe, is your friend
the last one was
next week gonna come in?
Next week I probably won't, but I reckon week after. I reckon I'll do like a couple of times a month sort of thing from me.
Yeah, that's fine, cool. Mate. Yeah, whatever's happy. Whatever you're happy with, basically. Oscar, you're always welcome as always.
I will try and get involved as much as I can. I'm trying to spend as much time as I can with my girl because she's in a women's home at the moment.
Understandable.
Which is not a fun place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to spend as much time with her as we can do, having time to ourselves finally. I would try and be involved in this. I did watch a little bit. I noticed you put the last one just went up a couple of days ago, was it?
About 4 days or so, I think it was.
4 days ago. Yeah, I did watch a little bit of it. So yeah, but I think this has been really good, mate. Joe, it's been a pleasure to meet you, mate.
Yeah, you too.
And
you're good.
Yeah, it's great, like knocking heads and that. I don't generally think we disagree with very much at all, which is kind of
this is what this is kind of for. It's more of a discussion, isn't it?
On stream with two other left-wing people, Bunton being one of them, and being considerably more left-wing than either of you, and I still found myself weirdly like agreeing with you guys. So maybe I'm a secret lefty. Who knows?
Oh, you could be. Just don't.
Which is very convincing.
Don't join on the polo club. No, by the way, there's a combination. Jim Beam Rye and Ginger Ale was saying, I'll tell you all that'll sort you straight out.
Yeah, we just get you liquored up, Joe. That's all it is, mate. Cool.
Yeah, and I'm very intrigued by your idea of a lower tax, no tax threshold. I actually think that's quite an interesting one.
Yeah, a good mid-ground of capitalism.
Let's make it happen because I'll be considerably richer. Not that any of the gigs are going to come back anytime soon for me, so I'll still be only having one job to earn the money with. But mate.
Cool.
I tell you what, being a musician right now, it's just like anyone says, "Do you want to do an online collab?" I'm like, yes, please, anything. I just need.
Well, Joe plays guitar. I saw his video the other day. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I've just finished. Hopefully, I'll be on a cover of a Faith No More track, which will hopefully be up in the coming weeks. So
cool.
Apparently, the one bit left to do is my keyboards, and I've added those. So
decent.
So now it's really but awesome. Anyway, Simon, thanks for hosting. Joe,
that's
nice
quite all right. No worries.
Guys.
I'll see you both next time. Thank you very much. So I really appreciate it. Till next time. Yeah, as you said.
Guys.
Yeah. Cheers.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in. We'll probably do it every Friday, as I intend to do. Different people each week. Thanks a lot, Joe and Ozzy. I think next time we might have a few more different people as well. So if you like what you see and hear, or even if you don't, just smash that subscribe. I'm quite a new channel, not that used to the streaming jazz at all, so I'd appreciate it, and things are only going to improve. So cheers, take care, have a good night, bye.